Good evening, and welcome to Pynchon Pals, a podcast about finally reading Thomas Pynchon. My name is Patrick Fiorilli, and I'm joined, as always, by Andrew Tillett.
Hi, guys.
And Duri Long.
Hello, hello.
Up at the top, we'd like to thank our supporters at patreon.com/pynchonpals, where you can sign up for $5 a month to hear exclusive bonus episodes, like our episode talking about The Master recently, and our upcoming sort of general Q&A episode, Q&A about Crying of Lot 49 and what have you. You can get in touch with the show at pynchonpals@gmail.com, and we'll also occasionally answer questions on the main feed as well, so you'll be able to hear them here if they come up naturally in discussion. On tonight's episode, we are discussing Chapter 6 of Thomas Pynchon's The Crying of Lot 49, a book my esteemed co-hosts are reading for the first time, have read for the first time. We did it. We are all officially down. Scratch the tally marks. We are all down 2 Thomas Pynchon books. Congratulations. A round of applause.
We're finally all on an even playing field.
That's true. None of us knows more about Thomas Pynchon than anyone else.
It seems, for our credibility, very important that we've now read more than a single Thomas Pynchon book.
Yeah, we were visiting in a bookstore in Burlington, Vermont. Was it Phoenix Books?
Phoenix,
I believe so.
yeah.
Yeah, we visited them recently, and we're put up a flyer. If you see our flyer there, we were there and chatted with the folks at Phoenix Books, and they seemed a little incredulous that we had signed up to do a Thomas Pynchon podcast, having read only one smaller Thomas Pynchon work from one of us, but you know, they wished us luck. So shout out to the folks at Phoenix Books if you are listening, or if you found out about the show from there. We had a nice conversation with them. Andrew, I believe you had a question that was worth reading up at the top here.
Yeah, we got this email from Robert in Glendale, Arizona, and the subject line was urgent help. So I don't think it should wait for the official Q&A. So you guys have the Google Drive document open. I'm going to read the question, and then I'm going to sort of explain what I did to help Robert.
Okay.
Questions. Greetings from Glendale. Okay. I see. I said he was from Glendale, Arizona. He only says Glendale, so I guess it's possible he's from a different Glendale. Sorry about that, Robert. Okay, starting over. Greetings from Glendale. I have been reading The Crying of Lot 49 along with the podcast. I read it once a while ago, but wanted to reacquaint myself before going forward with Pynchon, and can confirm it is just as good as I remember. Anyway, I was at a family get-together recently and was in the living room reading when my niece asked about my book. She's 14 and said that it sounded boring, even though I thought I did a good job explaining it. What should I do to make my niece think Pynchon / The Crying of Lot 49 / me are cool? Anything you can do to help is greatly needed. My next family dinner is next month.
Robert, I think it's great that you have regular family dinners.
That's lovely.
We should all be so lucky.
Very special.
So this is what I did. I wrote a short synopsis of the book, and I took it to my Gen Z coworker, Jake, who I'm pretty sure is 25, and asked him to translate it into Gen Z slang. And so now, if you guys both scroll down, you will see both my synopsis and Jake's translation. And I think Duri should read the one labeled English, and then Patrick can go back and read the one labeled Gen Z. Or if you guys have a strong feeling, you can switch that.
No, that sounds fine to me.
I'll dive in.
Are we about to make this podcast cringe? Is that what we're going for today on our
No, we're trying to
tackle Gravity's Rainbow?
We're trying to help Robert be not cringe.
Yeah, okay. All right.
And we're definitely the best suited to do that, as very in touch with
the youth.
Let
me inhabit my character. I'm going to prepare my character as Duri is talking.
Okay, yeah, I don't have to inhabit a character. This is just the summary. Okay, English. After the death of her ex-boyfriend, Edna Mosh travels to San Narciso, California, where she has been put in charge of his will. While dealing with his sprawling business and personal interests, Oedipus stumbles first upon a strange symbol in the bathroom. And, after attending a local theater production, a perhaps less than fictional group of darkly clad bandits known as Tristero. Unable to put them out of her mind, Oedipa travels up and down the state, hunting for clues to what Tristero is, eventually uncovering a motley crew of outcasts, an underground mail system, and dozens of examples of the mysterious symbol. After a meeting with a college professor, she learns that Tristero is an organization whose goal was to undermine the Thurn and Taxis company at every opportunity, before eventually crossing into the United States in the 1800s to take on the U.S. mail. With all these clues, Oedipa is left unable to make heads or tails of the situation, descending into a deep paranoia regarding if Tristero is real at all, and hunting for their elusive representative at a stamp auction.
Okay. I enter the room. I'm wearing perfectly relaxed fit pants and like a really heavyweight cotton t-shirt and a cool hat.
Which recently we discovered is also the fits of most of the characters in Beverly Hills 90210.
I'm dressed exactly like a character from the second season of Beverly Hills 90210.
A fashion style which has come back around.
I am Luke Perry, Gen Z icon. After the death of her ex-bae, R.I.P. King, Oedipa Mosh skirts to San Narciso, California, where she has been put in charge of his will. While dealing with his absolutely unhinged business stuff and personal interests, Oedipa finds a sus-ass symbol in the bathroom for a group known as Tristero. It's giving mystery. Instead, I want to be extremely clear. Andrew Tillett wrote this. Or Andrew Tillett transcribed this from an anonymous Gen Z coworker.
He's not anonymous. His name is Jake. He listens to the podcast sometimes.
Thanks,
Shout out,
work. He's the coworker who plays our podcast at work on 4 times speed.
It's the only way to listen.
I've learned about another friend who listens to this at work to drown out folks' conversations. So we have an alternative purpose beyond the commute.
We're great at drowning things out. Anyways, it's giving mystery. Instead of going out and touching grass, Oedipa starts investigating on some Scooby-Doo shit and finds an underground mail system, a gang of outcasts, and a bunch of instances of the same super sus symbol. She meets a professor who lore dumps onto her that Tristero is some boomer ag group beefing with the U.S. mail. Cringe. I support our boys in blue. Oedipa, looking rather delulu from the gaslighting and gatekeeping on the existence of Tristero, decides to see if this is cap or not by going to a stamp auction to frame Mog the group's representative.
Certain parts of this, there's a line in chapter 6 where Oedipa is given a book and there's like a whole, it's like really weirdly written and she's like, I can't read this. I feel like certain parts of the summary echo that sentiment.
Yeah, I think this was everything I wanted from Jake and Moore on this translation, and I think I learned some new words reading it. So, good luck, Robert, with your sister or niece. I really hope this helps. Tell her what we said. Just tell her exactly what Patrick just read out loud, and see if it.
Just play this part of the podcast. We'll get a new listener out of it. Thank you, Jake. Jake? Is your coworker?
Thank you, Jake.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Andrew, for bringing this important matter to our attention.
Reading is cool.
Reading is so cool. Reading Thomas Pynchon is cool. Listening to people talk about reading Thomas Pynchon is maybe the coolest thing of all.
Do you think we could inspire a Gen Z Thomas Pynchon wave? Like, what if I start seeing Thomas Pynchon shorts like filtered through YouTube?
Oh, I thought you said Thomas Pynchon shorts, and I was imagining like a juicy tracksuit shorts that say like, what would they?
I mean, like,
they have a
WAST.
You mean it says WAST on the ass of the juicy tracksuit.
Wow. Merch.
Merch?
I meant vertical videos about Thomas Pynchon.
No, yeah, I get that.
I think we might have to like make a TikTok
would
count.
be awesome.
Yeah, we'll get there. I've been meaning to pivot this podcast to short form video for a long time.
I did not sign on for video.
It's the natural extension of 3-hour long podcasts about big books is short form video content.
We could split up every episode into 1,000 clips, 1,000 small clips.
Maybe we should. Do we want to jump in to talk about chapter 6 and then sort of reconvene for our thoughts on the book as a whole?
That sounds good.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay. I'm going to jump into my summary here. I'm going to take a sip of my ginger tea first. Chapter 6. This is written in our own vernacular, not in Gen Z slang, but we welcome future insights from the younger generations. Gen Alpha, get on Thomas Pynchon. The best time to start reading Thomas Pynchon was 4 months ago. The second best time is right now. Chapter 6. Oedipa returns to the motel to find Metzger has run off with one of the paranoid's teenage groupies. She can't seem to track down the director Driblette either. Next, she tries the used bookstore, but learns from the neo-Nazi surplus store next door that Zapf burned it down for insurance money. Finally, she calls on Professor Emery Bortz, who she finds holding a backyard wake for Driblette, who she learns walked into the Pacific. Bortz takes an interest in Oedipa's case, such as it is, and illuminates what he knows of the twisting histories of Tristero's conspiracy, from the late 16th century onwards, as they revolve around the European wars of religion, the decline of the Holy Roman Empire, the French Revolution, and questions of inheritance. Cohen stays in touch with new discoveries in postal catalogs, including one stamp which reads, "We await silent Tristero's empire." Alienated from almost every man in her life, Oedipa realizes there are 4 distinct possibilities: that she's actually found a global conspiracy, that she's making up a global conspiracy and is therefore crazy, that the whole plot was set up by Pierce before he died to manipulate or humiliate her, or that she's made up the plot against her and is therefore crazy. She gets drunk and drives out into the freeway sprawl, calling the Inamorato Anonymous from a payphone as a last resort, but he offers her no resolution. She can't stop thinking about the legacy of America and Pierce's, and by extension her own, role in it. Either everything has a hidden meaning beneath the surface of the obvious one, or nothing has any meaning at all. At long last, she attends an auction where the quote-unquote crying of Lot 49 refers to the opening of bidding for Pierce's stamp collection, which has attracted the interest of an unknown individual. That's the book.
You listed her 4 reasons.
Yes.
Or 4 scenarios of what could be going on. Did you also feel like 2 of those scenarios were kind of the same scenario?
You mean the possibility that she's crazy?
Yeah.
But she's crazy for different reasons.
I reread that paragraph like 4 times because I was like, I feel like the 2 of these are just that she thinks she's crazy. Like she hallucinated it or she hallucinated it.
Yes, well, it depends on which conspiracy she's hallucinating, I think is her reasoning. And it would be different if she is hallucinating a global conspiracy that concerns the, fate of empires versus hallucinating a conspiracy that concerns her as an individual that has been set up to manipulate her specifically.
I see.
Oedipa's reaching a paragraph count in a middle school essay, guys. 5 paragraphs, 4 clearly distinct ways that this could have gone down.
4 main
and
body
paragraph.
Yeah. I mean, to some extent, I do think as a whole, this chapter feels like this is a final chapter where it's like, okay, we're laying some things out on the table. The main character is going to process some of the things that are laid out on the table. And, we're kind of going to go from there a little bit. What did y'all think? You had some thoughts about how this book was going to end, Andrew, and whether or not we were going to get a proper conclusion to some of these mysteries.
It feels like, I guess I would say that on a scale of other books to V, this does tie up more of the loose ends. I mean, obviously we don't really find out what's going on, but we don't really find out what's going on in a slightly more satisfying way than we don't find out what's going on with V. I think this is more satisfying because I think the open-endedness is what is interesting here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I once again find myself wanting to reread a significant chunk of this book, but
it's a book that lends itself to rereading, I will say, having now reread it.
I think it's necessary. I guess we're not doing full impressions of the book yet, but I do feel like the ending felt a bit like, I think you've said a few times, Patrick, that this book is an extended short story.
Yeah, Thomas Pynchon also says this.
Yeah. I feel like the ending of this book felt like the ending of a short story. Like, oh, the crying of Lot 49. Suddenly we have the title.
Did either of y'all know like what the crying of a lot referred to before this book? Okay. Neither did I the first time I read it.
There was a point once we were getting through the stamp stuff, I was like, oh yeah, a lot is a thing in an auction. So once I was like, I know the term lot to be used for auctions, but yeah, I didn't put the crying part together until Mr. Cohen told me.
Yeah, Genghis Cohen shows up a lot in this section, in this final chapter. At least one critic I learned from J. Cary Grant and his companion, who J. Cary Grant, I guess we're saying goodbye to. He will not be joining us for the companion to Gravity's Rainbow.
We will miss J. Cary Grant.
Shout out to J. Cary Grant. Thanks for all your great annotations in your companion. At least one critic seems to have like a dogged belief that Genghis Cohen is like clearly an agent of Tristero and is just manipulating
I thought the same thing
throughout the whole book.
Well, because he shows up at the end at the auction.
He might just be interested
looking
in
for
stamps.
the person, and it could very well just be Genghis Cohen.
Could be.
I like Genghis. He's nice, and he's just a nice old man.
Who can never remember to keep his fly up.
Who can never, yeah. I feel like I understood the urge. He was like, I know that my job is to professionally appraise stamps, but he got into it because he's a collector and he saw some cool stuff and he's like, look, I appraised it. We have an idea of the value, but I do want to buy some of them. And that's what can I say? I like Genghis. Also, imagine that other guy who thinks that he coined the name Genghis Cohen must have just been furious that he just kept coming up in this book. It becomes so important.
Yeah, shout out to Genghis Cohen. But you remain convinced that he is an agent, Duri.
I don't know if convinced feels like a pretty strong word for the evidence that we have in this book, but that did cross my mind immediately when Oedipa was like, I'm going to this auction to like see the secret person that's bidding on these stamps, and then the first person she sees at the auction is surprise, surprise, Genghis Cohen. And he's like, oh, this is embarrassing that I'm here. And I was like, who's the person you would least suspect?
But why? Okay. Why? The whole thing is that he wants to do at the auction, the unknown representative wants to do the book bid, but the auction house doesn't trust the unknown agent. But they would have trusted if Cohen had just gone, like Cohen doesn't need to look at the stamps ahead of time.
That's true.
He's already looked at all of them. He's the appraiser. So
I guess so, but that's all information that Cohen shared with Oedipa. So he could have just made that whole story up.
He could have invented a fake representative.
He makes it up and then Rugg pulls it just to keep the plate spinning, I guess. There's a different person who I think is the secret agent. But
who do you think is the secret agent?
I think Pierce. I'm not sure if I'm convinced Pierce is dead. When they were like, there's a secret agent, I was like, Pierce is back, baby.
I think there is a compelling reading of this book that Pierce is not dead. But also Pierce, maybe I'm sort of like Jesus Arrabal pilled, but like I don't think Pierce can die. Pierce is like too indomitable of like the American spirit of empire and exploitation. Like you can't kill Pierce. Pierce fact, is the landscape, the web of connections that Oedipa gets tied up in.
He lives on through his holdings.
Yeah, he lives on through his holdings. This is actually the American dream, is a certain kind of immortality through your real estate holdings.
It's kind of giving Fallout vibes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Yeah. I'm not sure if I'm convinced that Pierce is an agent in the sense that he is like an employee of Trastero. I think he might be more of a Diocletian blob, where he at a point was sort of given the task of spreading the word.
Yeah.
And that he might have just gone to ground and then been like, I should have packed that one section of stamps and forgot to, maybe, like he's like resurfacing, but he's overall gone to ground, I think, is
but acts as a kind of like
taking away
an evangelist of sorts, or a disciple.
He's big in Yo-Yo Don. He like sets up that's kind of him, but it's like a fallout of his involvement, because he's, for the listener, I did sort of a hand wave, sort of as if I was touching every key
on a piano.
On a keyboard. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I do think that Pierce has a touch of the sort of Silicon Valley, like rich billionaire vibe of longevity and preserving oneself to like be in the future, turn yourself into an AI that can live forever sort of energy.
Pierce would love that one guy who only
takes all of the supplements,
and does cold plunges every day.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do feel like I felt like when Oedipa was describing the possibility that Pierce had invented this whole conspiracy just to like mess with her, it seemed ridiculous until I was thinking about like some of the sort of wild measures that billionaires go to like preserve their legacy or personhood beyond death, or this whole like kind of cult of survival.
Well, this is like, I feel like this book kind of has the pulse of the burgeoning Silicon Valley ideology, which is like a combination of industrial capitalist, titan of industry, baronism, combined with this real libertarian sense of individualism, combined with as you were saying, like this perverse desire to live forever. Like, I think that's all wrapped up in Pierce and other characters in this book, for sure. But especially Pierce, who does in some ways cheat death, I guess.
Yeah, it felt a lot like that guy in Fallout that we've been watching.
Robert House?
Yes.
Yeah, there's even in the Fallout video games, not just the TV series, I think there's you can tell that some of the writers of those games have Pynchon on the mind, I think, on occasion. Shall we turn to sort of like the chronological progression through this chapter? We sort of discussed a little bit of the auction and the conspiracies towards the end, but we do not start off there. Instead, we start off with the first abandonment of many that Oedipa...
Well, really the second.
Faces. Yeah.
Because Oedipa has lost mucho to LSD.
Yes, that is correct. Well, and she loses Pierce.
Third as well.
Oh, yeah. So she loses
fourth.
Pierce to death, mucho to LSD, and now...
Hilarious to Mossad.
Hilarious. Yes, I forgot about Hilarious. And then now we have Metzger, her lover, and co-executor, has run off with a 15-year-old girlfriend of someone in the... Oh gosh, what's the name of the band again?
The Paranoids.
Paranoids. Thank you. I was going to say the Pretenders, but that's a real band. The Paranoids. So yeah, he's run off with a 15-year-old girl. I was asking Patrick this morning why there's so much pedophilia in the two Thomas Pynchon books that we've read so far.
Why indeed? Any thoughts?
Anyone done a Control F through any released documents recently?
Well,
I do think Patrick mentioned this earlier, but I do think there's something about like power and control.
Yeah, if anything, the extent of some of the like Jeff Epstein files and the insidious quality of the wide-ranging networks of connections across the like emails and stuff that testify not just to like, oh, people knew what was going on, but like people knew some amount of what was going on with this guy and his parties, or like people sort of tacitly knew and looked the other way, like, and the ways that kind of knowledge works its way through elite institutions at kind of every level of, as Oedipa kind of thinks about here, the American Republic writ large. So it's, you know, it's higher education and it's finance and it's government, and the networks of those connections of power predicated on the suffering of vulnerable young women feels like something this book is in touch with in a real way. And also here again in Surge, one of the Paranoids sings a song about how his girlfriend left with Metzger, and so he's gonna try dating an 8-year-old instead and hang around playgrounds. And we get a couple more Vladimir Nabokov Lolita references to Humbert, the narrator of Lolita, and the word nymphit again,
which also showed up in the Epstein files.
Yes. Yeah.
Looked it up. Thomas Pynchon does not seem to be in the Epstein files. So let's get that on the record. There is a New York Times article that the headline is basically Thomas Pynchon called it, which is wild. And then there was a Reddit post of a zoom in of a Jeffrey Epstein photo where you can see Mason and Dixon on his bookshelf. So that was the extent of it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do just feel like even that idea that Serge was dating a 15-year-old who ostensibly are they in their teens?
Yeah, they're like 17, 18
yeah, so he
or
was
something.
dating a 15-year-old, but then his like 15-year-old girlfriend left him, and
for
so he wants
35-year-old.
Sorry?
For a 35-year-old.
For a 35-year-old, and then he wants to date an 8-year-old. Like, I do feel like there's this narrative of like, oh, someone has a free will and like makes a decision and leaves me, so I'm going to try to exert power over someone who doesn't have that capability. And I feel like there's a running theme of control and power over vulnerable individuals as like a way of exerting control over one's life that's kind of running through this book. As well as, I mean, I felt like this was kind of a running theme in V as well. The idea of these sort of like networks of power and their exploitation of the vulnerable.
Yeah, and they're pointedly sexual exploitation of the vulnerable.
Yeah, which unfortunately is perhaps more tied to reality than we all would have wished to believe.
Yeah. So Metzger basically sets her up with another lawyer from the firm to settle up I think a funny underlying thing here is that Oedipa and Metzger have effectively done nothing to actually execute the will. They've just been, Metzger seems to have just been like going to the bar and sleeping around at the motel, clearly with Oedipa and also with other women there. And
girls.
Girls. Oedipa has been chasing down this Tristero mystery, and so there remains like a large amount of the estate that is just unsettled, and like someone has to go to some meetings at some point to decide what's going to happen to it.
I really thought Metzger was going to be just like a bigger character. I was like, chapter 6, Metzger's coming back. Rubber's going to meet the road. Didn't happen. We spent a lot of time learning about Metzger in chapter
baby
3
Igor himself,
for him to not come back ever again.
You know, actually thinking though, Metzger himself is sort of like exploited as a young child by Hollywood. Like, I think that is maybe a point of reference to his character, is that he is part of a system of power that relies on his youthfulness as a child actor.
That's fair.
So everybody's kind of like that's not exonerating him, but I think that is maybe part of the psychological portrait that is being painted here.
So Oedipa sort of moves on past this and calls a series of people. First, she tries to call Randolph Driblett, who is the director of the play, I forget if she's been trying to call him previously or she's been avoiding calling him previously.
I think she keeps thinking she should reach back out and then procrastinating because she has a very long to-do list, to be fair, of just Trastero-related symbols to track down.
Turns out, unfortunately, she procrastinated too long because Randolph Driblett, I guess we don't find that out exactly at this moment, but she calls and his mom answers and says there'll be a statement at noon tomorrow. Our lawyer will read it. And we later find out that Randolph Driblett has died by sort of walking into the Pacific Ocean. So then she calls Emery Bortz and talks to his wife, Grace.
Yes, and Grace is sort of like an interesting like mirror or foil almost for Oedipa, where she, like Oedipa at the start of this book, is sort of like a Southern California housewife, except she has a bunch of kids running around, and obviously Oedipa does not. So she's like on the phone and is like yelling at her kids. There's a funny line. Oh God, have you ever met an infanticide? Come over, it may be your only chance.
Yeah, and it seems like Emery Bortz is kind of a lackluster husband. He's just like sitting on the back porch drinking beer with his graduate students while his wife is sort of trying to corral all the kids and vacuum.
Yeah. I'm excited to hear your guys' thoughts on his various backyard parties with grad students. I want you guys to compare and contrast what you guys do.
I think this is a culture of academia that is thankfully being phased out.
Yeah, before we get to Emery's backyard, though, Oedipa drives over to Zap's used books, or what used to be Zap's used
Tries
books.
to drive over to it.
Yeah, it no longer exists. It has been arsoned by Zap.
Interestingly enough, not one, but two different places that I was very familiar with when I lived in Atlanta were burnt down with suspicion of being burnt for insurance purposes. One was a coffee shop that I was very fond of that I think actually someone was convicted for burning it down for insurance purposes. And then the other was my old apartment. I was not living in it at the time, but it did burn down in sort of like a giant conflagration. And that one was more of a suspicion of perhaps insurance, but who's to say? Anyways, these things do happen.
That's a fun tidbit, Duri.
You know, and I was talking to someone else.
Admitting on the pod that lots of places you frequent burn down for insurance money.
I didn't get any insurance money.
Well, yeah, obviously. What's the bit from earlier in this book where the other lawyer insists that the money got paid to the mob boss? He just didn't realize it because it had been so thoroughly laundered, but he's sure the money got there eventually. You just may not know that you got the insurance money.
Well, I think I would maybe have some inclination, but...
The coffee shop I never paid for a coffee and burned down for insurance money.
I just feel like, I don't know if this is true in all cities, but I feel like there was like a disproportionate amount of sort of arson that took place during my time living in Atlanta.
I do think Atlanta is an interesting comparison point here because it is a city that, they call it the Phoenix City because obviously it was burned down to the ground.
I was wondering if that's where you were going with that.
At least once. But, well, that led to a kind of culture in Atlanta broadly, which is like, well, you'll just tear down the building and build a new one. Like, there's very few sort of like historical architectural remnants, even, post Civil War, post the burning of Atlanta. Like, buildings just don't really stick around, which is kind of related to the portrait of southern suburban California we're getting here, where it's just like buildings are going up and coming down all the time because there's a lot of money moving around in real estate speculation, and a lot of people are trying to get rich quick, get out, and then sell the lot to somebody else. So I think there is something similar about like a lot of money is moving, and therefore a lot of buildings are going up and down.
Well, and not all the buildings are high quality. Like they mentioned that the Zapp's used book was only really built to stand for a couple of years anyways.
Yeah.
So kind of shoddy construction.
At the very end of the book, the place they're holding the auction is said to be one of the oldest buildings in San Narciso, and it was built like around World War II. So it's only 20 years old.
Yeah.
And that's the historic building in San Narciso.
Yeah, so it's really, really a city that's sort of like popped up very recently. While we're at Zapp's, we pop into the neighboring store, which is a government surplus store.
Yeah, except their main business
which government?
Yeah. Their main business is selling old Nazi stuff and also manufacturing new Nazi paraphernalia on the cheap.
Yeah, that they're sort of marketing as old Nazi paraphernalia. Yeah, the guy that's running this store, Winthrop Tremaine, Winner for short, has a very entrepreneurial mindset about this business, is kind of willing to sell this gear to anyone who will buy it as long as he can profit.
Yeah, he's trying to sell SS uniforms as like back to school wear for LA, I guess like high school and college students.
And I had a question about Oedipa here, because I think we've seen this several times throughout the book. Like, she seems sort of disgusted by this business practice, but she doesn't really say anything to him. In fact, she's like, oh, well, I'll keep you in mind for my future purchases, and then leaves the store, wonders, quote, if she should have called him something or tried to hit him with any of a dozen surplus heavy, blunt objects in easy reach. There had been no witnesses. Why hadn't she? You're chicken, she told herself, snapping her seatbelt. This is America. You live in it. You let it happen. Let it unfurl.
Yeah, I love that line.
I really liked that line as well. And I think like she has this happen to her throughout the book, where she keeps encountering these sort of very ethically problematic situations, but is polite to everyone and is like, oh, well, thanks for your time. Like, I'll consider it. Or just has sort of like a polite conversation with everyone, even like her maintaining the relationship with Fallopian. She just kind of continues to like not offend anybody and move through this space, even though she seems sort of like disgusted or confused by a number of the actions that she witnesses.
Especially if you like contrast that with the fact that this whole book she's hunting a grand conspiracy. She's like convinced about nebulous evil that is occurring, but not sort of the evil she knows that her husband is doing and that her friends are doing.
Yeah, like she kind of just lets the smaller scale evils pass by, and it's almost like the larger conspiracy sort of leads her to inaction in terms of the everyday problems that she's facing.
Well, I think it comes to a head in her interaction with that sailor in the sort of flop house, where, what is it? Isn't she's cradling him at some point and is saying like, I can't help you. And then she fantasizes about giving, or does indeed give him like $10 that's immediately taken by the guys he owes money to. And I think that she, and especially towards the end of the chapter, keeps revolving around the idea that's like, oh, I am part of the problem, but I don't know how to respond to my complicity in the problem that keeps people under the boot or keeps the system oppressively on top of other people.
Yeah, and it's almost like she sees it as too vast to intervene in. Not to skip ahead, but there's a passage later on page 150 where she talks about everything as a binary. Like, it's either a vast conspiracy or it's nothing. It's either this or it's that. And she doesn't really acknowledge the possibility that, like, it's possible there's not a vast conspiracy, and also there are many individual evils happening all around you that you could, in fact, act on or intervene in.
Yeah, but there's also that section a little bit later on about the that like sect of Calvinists, the predestination, Skirvhamites. I found the page 128. And I'm pretty sure in this section, because I'm not going to reread this whole paragraph while I'm saying this sentence, is they talk about like an evil, like sort of the clockwork of evil, or clockwork of the doomed. And I don't know, it's kind of like Oedipa is a little cog in this, like she's continuing to spin around, which is like allowing this clockwork of doom to occur. And she's looking upward and thinking about this grand thing that is happening, but like she's doing it on the ground.
Well, and the whole thing with the clockwork of doom, right, was that it was too tempting to look into. I got a little lost in this section, if I'm being honest, but it seemed like they were trying to remain separate from the clockwork of doom, but then kept getting tempted by the prospect of annihilation and sort of submitting to the clockwork of doom.
Yeah, they sort of say that including the founder, I guess, sort of given to the fact that it's easier to just go with the flow and be annihilated than it is to fight against it.
Well, I think it's that, and it's also that the clockwork as clockwork is interesting. Like, it's kind of fascinating. You want to keep looking at all of this terrible machinery, and it, especially for a person like Oedipa, who admits that she's kind of like curious and wants to get to the bottom of things, the idea that she can step outside of that descent into the machinery, sort of deeper and deeper into the systems that underlie systems that underlie systems, like that's the a little bit her kind of like psychic downfall.
Yeah, she gets lost in like trying to make sense of this web of meaning, and the whole like, oh, this is connected to that, and it's all owned by Pierce, and there's this vast, and the mail system and communication and the maps and the railroads, and it's all connected in this picture of America. She gets sort of lost in this really vast, interconnected view of the world, such that I feel like she can't make sense of the more concrete events that are happening in her actual life.
Kind of paralyzed by the information that she's taking in and sort of the quantity of it.
Which is also that's part of the function of the machinery, is to be kind of like fascinating and to be kind of like overwhelming. Like it's hard to get a clear idea of what's happening politically, socially, economically, because it, like, you can just keep digging at little details endlessly.
Well, and there's sort of a running theme of computation throughout this book. And I think there's something in that the information is so vast, it's almost more processable by a computer. Like a computer maybe could make sense of it, or a demon, but not by an individual human. Like, it's just too vast to be comprehended by an individual human, and all these networks and connections and ones and zeros is just like too much for Oedipa as one person to make sense of.
Yeah, to quote the wisdom of, you'll have to forgive the reference here, which is not to any extant work of political theory, but is to a line from the great character Nemec from season 1 of Star Wars Andor. Because this just cropped in my head, where he says that the pace of oppression outstrips our ability to understand it, and that is the real trick of the imperial thought machine. That if you like keep layering on atrocities and you keep layering on machinery on top of machinery and like systems that interconnect to systems, you get caught up in unraveling that machine and that mystery, and you lose the ability to understand what freedom or liberation from that machinery actually looks like, which is not an original concept to Star Wars, but it's, I think, sort of succinctly expressed by that quote.
Also, it's not the first time that we've talked about like predestination, I think, because we had the Remedios Faro painting with the hair knitting and creating the world.
Yeah.
So,
and I don't think that it's a spoiler to say that I have picked up from some references in the companions to V and Lot 49 that sort of predestination and Puritanism and those lines of thinking are deeply important in Gravity's Rainbow. So we'll encounter them again. Okay,
that's a good missive for myself to familiarize myself again with early American religious history.
Well, this comes up in the annotations to this chapter is that Winthrop is a name of one of these like very prominent old Puritan New England families, the Winthrops, among whom were also the Pynchons, like historically. So there is some of this is also Pynchon reckoning with his own familial legacy as like this old money New England family.
Yeah, wasn't John Winthrop big in the early Massachusetts history?
Yeah, I think it's those Winthrops. I mean, it's a first name here, but it is he is selected as being, I guess we didn't actually say it. The guy who is trying to sell all the Nazi paraphernalia is named Winthrop Tremaine.
I said his name.
Oh, you did?
Winner for short.
Yeah, Winner for short. Yeah.
Wasn't that Rooney's name in V? Wasn't his?
No, that's Winsome. It's Rooney Winsome. Yeah, I thought the same thing. I like saw that and I was like, oh, and then I was like, oh wait, it's just a different W name.
I didn't think about that until we were just talking about it, and I was like, haven't we already met a Winthrop? No, we haven't.
No, we've met a Winsome.
His nickname should have been Winner too.
I feel like they would probably get along. Actually, no, they wouldn't get along because I guess we don't know that
this guy's a new age racist, and Rooney was an like old guard racist,
implicitly a Yankee. So maybe they wouldn't get along so well. Do we go to
the Bortzes?
The Bortzes. Emery Bortz.
This chapter is still plagued by the starting and stopping and the flashback and the flash forward that we've been dealing with, and I had to go back, or before we recorded, I went back and read all of the sections relating to the history of Trastero, and they occur. It's like 5 pages occurring over like 20 pages of the book, and you just have to like scroll around.
I think part of my problem reading this book has been that we've been reading it for a podcast, and I
got bad news about the rest of Thomas Pynchon's books.
Well, no, I think it's worked well for it worked well for V because you need a little time to digest, but I feel like this book is short and a lot of the information, like Andrew was saying, is spread throughout the book. And in between episodes, I forget like important information that came up in the last section or the section before. I was like, wait a minute, who's Emery Bortz again? And I had to go back and revisit that. And then it turns out, and so like you have to like search back for information. And at times I have felt like if I just sat down and read this whole book in one sitting, I maybe would have an easier time keeping track of what's going on.
Do it. I dare you.
I might do it after we finish. I'll report back on my third reread of The Crying of Lot 49.
Let's break for, I don't know, 5 to 8 hours. Duri will go read the book again.
I was thinking about this. I usually like books that are like sub 150 pages for a couple reasons. But one of the reasons is they're great to take on planes because they're very small.
Yeah.
And if you're not flying like transoceanic, you sort of take half of it one way and half of it on the way back.
I select what jackets I wear on planes for what have pockets big enough to fit a little book in them.
But this would not be a good book for a plane ride. I think it would take, they're just far too dense. It's far too dense.
It's very dense.
I would need to land and book another flight instantly to keep going.
I could say, I think this book is the densest slim volume I have ever read.
That's fair.
Safely.
Yeah. Okay, so we get to the Bortzes. Dr. Imre Bortz, presumably PhD. I guess it's not confirmed, but presumably, is in a hammock. There's 3 graduate students, 2 men and 1 woman. They are all extremely drunk. There's beer all over the ground.
And poor Grace is inside trying to manage all these children.
Yeah, this is where Grace asks Oedipa, how'd you manage to get away from your kids? And Oedipa's like, I don't have any kids. And Grace is like, oh, you just sort of look harried enough that you might have kids. I just sort of assumed.
All of the adults in her life act like children.
Yes, indeed they do.
The conspiracy is Oedipa's child. Well, they do actually keep saying, I just put that together. They do keep saying later on in this chapter that like she goes to the doctor because she's pregnant. Like she thinks she's pregnant. And then like, I think there's a line later that's like, your gynecologist has no test for what she was pregnant with. So I do think there is this running theme that the conspiracy is a little bit of like Oedipa's child.
Well, and there's also a lot of imagery of descending angels and like winged floating light things that you can draw a lot of parallels between that and like the imagery of the Annunciation, where the angel descends and tells Mary that she will birth the Savior. Like there's a lot of Annunciation imagery throughout this.
Not the
Immaculate. We had a whole
not the Immaculate Conception. No,
that's a whole
we can't get into that.
Thing.
If you learn
into that right now,
we can't get into it. But if you learn one thing from this podcast, it's that pedantic Catholics will correct you for saying what is and isn't Immaculate Conception. Look it up in your free time. No, the Annunciation, where it is announced by the angel that Mary is pregnant with the Savior.
So when you guys have grad school people over, you've never once laid in a hammock, Duri?
No.
I think you should. It seems like a great way to hold court if you set up a hammock.
Yeah, I think there's been a shift in academia to move away from like getting drunk with your graduate students, which I think is probably for the best for many reasons. And
don't you want to be the quirky hammock professor, though? You don't have to get drunk. You could just lay in a hammock.
I'm not trying to defend Imre Bortz per se.
Imre Bortz seems like the worst. Please do not mount a defense of Imre Bortz.
What I'm saying is that we come into this scene and it's like, oh, there's like an extremely drunk professor with his extremely drunk graduate students and his like poor wife who is taking care of children and vacuuming in the background. That said, among the men who Oedipa encounters in this book, Imre is one of the least creeps. Like, he does not actually seem to be taking advantage of anyone in an extremely untoward way, other than the sort of classical gendered archetype of I am not interacting with my children at all and just kind of getting drunk in the backyard.
Being a bad dad and a bad husband puts him right to the top. Like, he's just the best guy in this book because that's his major offense.
Yeah, he's not. I was like, oh, he's going to like clearly be. I had kind of forgotten about this. I forgot that Oedipa ever actually even meets Imre Bortz when he came up earlier. And I was like, oh, he's probably going to be like trying to sleep with his student or like sleep with Oedipa, and like kind of genuinely does seem interested in like this interesting little textual question that Oedipa is trying to get to the bottom of, and is like as helpful as he can be under the circumstances.
Yeah, I feel like the
bar is
low. What did we have
low.
in the last episode? The worse than Schoenmacher award.
The worse
I feel
than
like
Schoenmacher award.
the bar is low for the quality of man that we're finding in these Pynchon novels.
Yeah, but Emery isn't the absolute worst.
Who's the best man that we've met so far across V and the Crying of Lot 49?
God, is it Benny Profane? Is Benny Profane the best guy?
It's the Portuguese train conductor in
No.
Egypt.
Yeah, no, it is the train
it's
conductor.
him
Yeah.
or McClintock Sphere.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's up there.
Anyways, what Oedipa soon finds out is that these people they're really interested in the kind of like textual question. There's this funny in a literary criticism kind of way situation where Oedipa comes in and is like, I'm interested in the historical Warfinger. And then they're all like, no, who cares about the historical Warfinger? We've got all these like textual fragments and variants. I don't care anything about the actual guy. We've got all these interesting words and variations in front of us, which is, they even describe, is sort of the opposite approach that Driblet, God rest him, took in his conception of the play, which is like, yeah, I use one version over here and one version over there, and I'm trying to get to the like authentic spirit of the play, much more so than the precise words that the author set down in a permanent way.
I found this section kind of amusing because by all accounts, this play seems like it wasn't a very good play, nor a very popular play in its time. And it's been picked up by like this theatrical director. There's this whole group of graduate students and ostensibly a faculty member that are all devoting their time to making sense of this kind of like pretty bad piece of literature from however many hundreds of years ago.
I don't understand what you think the unrealistic part is.
Yeah,
I didn't think it was unrealistic. I just thought it was funny. It was a funny portrait of academia.
Yes.
I was really, having not been to grad school, when they all remember the exact line when Oedipa asks about the scene, and they're like, we all remember the exact line that was said on stage, and it's not what you just quoted to us. That felt really prime grad school.
It is like oddly, there's like an odd sort of tenderness to this scene where they all do genuinely seem sad that this guy whose work they had disagreements with, but who was clearly interested in like the same period and tackling the question of Warfinger's work from a different angle than they're doing academically. But they're all sad that he's gone, and seemingly in a very tragic way. And I think it's interesting that I think it's Emery or one of them calls him Randy Driblet instead of Randolph, because throughout the rest of the book, Oedipa has been calling him Randolph, and it's like, oh, to these, four assembled academics, he was Randy. And like that, it was really humanizing in an interesting way to me.
I bet Randolph is the guy who, he was in the PhD program for a while. He sort of bails and just leaves with a master's, and now he's putting on the plays in town. And so they're all close still, Yeah. They're all friends.
Yeah.
And Oedipa
he was
gets
in this backyard very recently.
Yeah, Oedipa gets the sense that the woman who seems to be taking it the hardest, like, may have had some sort of relationship with Randy at one point.
Yeah.
Just another little whole sick crew that we encounter.
Indeed. And there's a bunch of like kind of death imagery that sort of starts at this point, when this is where Oedipa finds out that Randolph has in fact died. And I'm trying to find the line.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Let me.
It's about
We get
like
another taking a Brody reference. Is that the second one in this book? And the third overall?
Yeah, hadn't you heard? They all looked at her. Death glided by, shadowless, among the empties on the grass.
yeah, and then later on, there's Bortz is describing
These pornographic
print.
slides.
Yes. And says, notice how often the figure of death hovers in the background. And then later, Oedipa visits the cemetery. So I do think there's a lot of kind of imagery of death and death creeping in as a shadow.
The cemetery, which may or may not be the same one that the dandelion wine came from.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
It might be. Well, but didn't the dandelion pave over they paved over that cemetery?
Oh, yeah, they paved over the cemetery. I guess, yeah, new cemetery.
No, but we have a lot of cemetery imagery
You're
returning throughout the book, and death and ghosts and shadows.
Yeah. And so they're looking
Bones.
at these bones. Yeah. They're looking at these slides because Bortz tells Oedipa that the Tristero variant is from basically a porn parody of the Courier's tragedy that was written, he suspects, by this rogue Calvinist sect in order kind of to be like a manual of what not to do. And it is currently held in the Vatican archives, but seemingly has been reprinted only in this paperback version. And that's like kind of odd to him. But he's like, yeah, I did some research way back when on the grant funded project where I was looking at those porn woodcuts and like, you want to come see the slides?
Yeah, this is important. I think we skipped this, but so this is supposed to be Bortz's book that he edited, but when she shows him the edition, he calls it out as a like a forgery, and that it's being put out by like a different publishing house than the one that he works with in California.
Yeah.
And why would there be a forgery of this like obscure play?
We deal with a lot of
who
forgeries.
could have done
Who's
it?
forging things in this book, Duri?
Yeah, I guess so. We have all the forged stamps as well. It just seems like I'm kind of with Oedipa. Like, it just seems like a wild conspiracy. If someone made this just for her, or even a wild conspiracy in the world, seems like a lot of effort to go to.
Maybe Pierce is sort of doing a Squid Game thing where this is just for his entertainment. He's so wealthy that he's just looking for something to keep him occupied. And he put together this fun little probe.
That like Glass Onion TV show.
Yeah.
The Knives Out.
The Knives Out movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where he kind of orchestrates this.
Yeah,
whole
it's
thing
giving
for his
kind of that
entertainment.
middle grade chapter book, The Westing Game. You all remember that one?
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Deeply inspirational to Pynchon, I'm sure. Okay. We get an interesting little bit of Oedipa interiority, beepity interiority alert, where the narration goes, "They are stripping from me," she said subvocally, feeling like a fluttering curtain in a very high window, moving up to, then out over the abyss. "They are stripping away one by one my men. My shrink, pursued by Israelis, has gone mad. My husband on LSD gropes like a child further and further into the rooms and endless rooms of the elaborate candy house of himself and away, hopelessly away from what has passed. I was hoping forever for love. My one extramarital fella has eloped with a depraved 15-year-old. My best guide back to the Tristero has taken a Brody. Where am I?" And then to your point from the last episode, Duri, the narration says, "Too much sunlight shone on the bottle, silent all around them." There's a lot of sunlight in these last few pages.
There is. And I think I also kind of highlighted this passage of interiority from Oedipa. And I think there's something here in terms of, we've talked about earlier, like she walks into a room and she wants to be perceived by men. And I think she has thus far kind of defined herself by the men that she attracts or associates with. And is really very shaken by losing the attention of these men. I was trying to make sense of her feelings about Mucho because she seems so upset that he is on LSD and is just so done with him. And I was like, is she really that opposed to the drug, or what is it that's like really bugging her about this? And I think it's that like he's not really paying attention to her anymore because he's so kind of lost in his own world. I don't know if that resonates with you two at all.
I think it does. Well, I keep going back and forth on whether or not I think this book is or is not a journey of self-actualization or self-realization for Oedipa. Like, does she come into her own through all of this experience, or does she kind of collapse into herself?
I think she might come into her own.
Because when you look at it that way, the novel becomes much more of sort of a Bildungsroman, like it's almost a coming-of-age novel. I mean, Oedipa is 28, and who among us hasn't stared down the barrel of turning 30 and thought a lot about one's place in the world and one's relationships to everyone around them? So I do think that is also there, perhaps especially in the kind of extremely gendered environment that Oedipa has hitherto occupied, where it's like, oh yeah, she's like young and hot, and now she is a housewife, and what does that mean for her?
He definitely goes through like a pruning in this book, where he's sort of, cutting away the sort of branches that she's built up to this point. I guess, Duri, you're more of a gardener than I am. My understanding is you can over prune, though, and kill the plant.
You can. It depends on the plant.
It seems like we might be dealing with a situation where we've probably pruned more than we need to, and we're teetering on the edge.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I feel like the book leaves it a little bit like remains to be seen whether Oedipa sprouts back. So sometimes you can prune and it really rejuvenates the plant and sprouts back with vigor into a new bush, or if Oedipa has been over pruned and kind of loses it. I lean a little more on the optimistic side that she kind of seems to pull herself back together a little bit by the end. Although we'll get to that.
Yeah, should we gloss at this point what, just like in one fell swoop, do we want to gloss what she ends up learning about the Tristero conspiracy history?
Yeah, I'm hoping one of you two can do that. It was a lot of European religious history back and forth.
A lot of, capital or proper nouns.
A lot of proper nouns.
The European wars of religion were waged in Europe during the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries. Fought after the Protestant Reformation began in 1517. And it goes on from there, the Wikipedia page.
And in short, Thurn and Taxis was tied up in all this. There was a shadow organization that emerged in response to it, Tristero, led by a guy that claimed to be related to the original Thurn and Taxis folks, but then couldn't inherit the Thurn and Taxis operation, and so he ended up creating his own shadow network.
Yeah, William of Orange, who was a king of England, comes to fight on behalf of the Low Countries against the Holy Roman Empire and Spain, I guess.
Because the Holy Roman Empire and Spain, both Catholic nations.
Yes. Yeah.
The Low Countries, Protestant, but sort of under the boot of the Holy Roman Empire.
Yeah. So a guy gets put in charge of basically being the Low Countries postmaster, which is, say, he takes over the Thurn and Taxis company, but then his cousin, who is the eponymous Tristero, thinks that he should be in charge because that's how Europe worked back in the day. And
Hernando Joaquin de Tristero y Calavera.
And it's kind of in question whether he is actually the cousin or not.
Yeah, he's multiple times listed as a madman and crazy.
This guy invented, but the other guy who is put in charge of the postmaster, the Lord of Owain, was a real person. There's a lot of like J. Cary Grant gets into this. There's a lot of this person is real, this person is invented, this book is real, but it doesn't contain this information, and it's all mixed in there.
Anyway, after going back and forth with that and sort of being a general rebel, the Trastero guy decides just to focus on the Turn and Taxis postal monopoly and sort of dedicates his organization to undermining them perpetually until the Holy Roman Empire collapses.
Yeah, so this dovetails into, so following the sort of like 16th century and 17th century, like you start getting into the periods of sort of social unrest and like sort of working class revolutions across Europe, or, you know, you get the French Revolution, you get the beginnings of threats of revolution in Russia, and the Trastero organization sort of worms its way in and around these disputes. Sometimes it seems kind of as like a force that is enabling this social unrest, and sometimes as a force that seems to be more reactionary because it's largely comprised of like gentry and princes who feel that they are owed their inheritance. This ties into like the Oedipa and Pierce business, I think. They feel they're like owed an inheritance that they never received, and so they are upset about it.
That sounds kind of like our Peter Pingwood Society, honestly.
Yeah, the last chapter here really comes down hard on these ideas of sort of like legacy and inheritance and who is owed things from exploitation and empire. There's at one point Oedipa muses that like she could, you know, what if she like walked into the room where the execution of the will is going on, and she's like, I think we should just like, you know, divide it among all of the unhoused and the destitute and the poor, and we like pay it in installments or something. And then she figures that she would be labeled a communist sympathizer and laughed out of the room. So she decides not to do that either. Once again, she decides not to pursue any sort of direct action towards social justice.
Yeah, and I think our running theme of communication continues through here. There are some good lines. Well, I think maybe I'm skipping ahead a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, this is the only other thing sort of that happens with the conspiracy that we learn after this, is that eventually they come to the United States in the sort of like mid-19th century, get wrapped up in the Civil War, and this is where they have their back and forth with the Pony Express, and they become sort of like a shadowy figure in the like American underground.
Yeah, once Turn and Taxis sort of officially dissolves at the end of the 1700s, I guess they have to move to find a new enemy.
And I think the line I was going to quote was just before the fall of the Holy Roman Empire, where Trastero is involved. Oh gosh, I'll just read the line. They're kind of like plotting to control lines of communications. And they said the salvation of Europe depends on communication, right? We face this anarchy of jealous German princes, but whoever could control the lines of communication among all these princes would control them, which I thought was an interesting framing of communication. So their whole idea is that if they could control sort of the mail and the communications between these folks, they would control the people themselves, which feels very prescient of the sort of informatics communication of computers that's sort of emerging around the time of this book is being written, where, you know, computers eventually mediate all of our communication with each other. All of our communications with each other are sort of passing through these computers, which are owned by companies that then are in control to some sense of what and how we communicate with each other, whether that's via email or social media or whatever.
Yeah, it's all very Marshall McLuhan. You control the medium. It doesn't necessarily matter what the content of the messages is. You can use the medium itself to determine politics and social alignment.
Yeah, and I definitely think, I mean, obviously, social media was a long way out when this book was written, but I definitely think Pynchon is doing something in this book where he's looking at the new computers that are entering into workspaces and research spaces and kind of doing this exploration of like communication through the mail that has a lot of parallels to how we ultimately will end up communicating using technology, but maybe there isn't quite the vocabulary yet for how it, I don't know. I feel like Thomas Pynchon is looking a little into the future with this book and looking at these machines that have come into existence and how they're going to affect our and control our communication with each other, even though that maybe has not like fully come into reality yet.
Mm-hmm.
Which other people are too. You probably know more theory in the space, Patrick, than I do. But
I've mentioned a couple times that like this is also being written both at the birth of sort of communication science, communication studies, but also at the birth of information science. So the idea of the idea that information in a communicative context can be encoded digitally, which is to say, like, as a series of binary oppositions, a 1 or a 0, and you can basically communicate any necessary information you need to on that level, is part of Oedipa's anxiety by the end of this, where she starts questioning. She imagines this Pierce's world as this kind of computerized matrix of binary oppositions, either this or that, and starts to have a tremendous amount of angst around whether or not that is true and what falls through the gaps in that conception of communication or organization.
well, yeah, and if the medium of communication is controlling how we think about things, how we communicate, how we have dialogue with each other, what does it mean for that medium to be binary? Like, where does the gray area go?
Mm-hmm. Were you going to say something, Andrew?
No. I think I might have, but I don't remember what it was going to be.
Damn. Yeah, speaking of communication, this is when Oedipa tries to communicate with Driblet's body grave 6 feet under, and she imagines that if only, like Maxwell's demon, she could do one final kind of communication. If he could communicate with her what happened in the 5 minutes before his death, things would become clear to her. If there were like a last strand of spirit or protein that she could internalize somehow.
Yeah, did this feel sort of sexual to anyone else? Like, this last strand felt sort of sperm-like to me, and she even talks about feeling like briefly penetrated.
You mean a stubborn quiescence perhaps gathering itself for some last burst?
Yeah, I feel like she even refers to it as a payload somewhere. Anyway, she seems to be kind of like summoning up this final remaining spirit of Driblet like into her body. And then it's after this that she starts kind of talking about pregnancy a little bit. So it's almost like, again, like the visitation of the angel, but also sort of this artificial insemination of information from Driblet.
Yeah, well, his name is also like has dribble in it. Like it's viscous and I think probably intentionally seminal.
And his first name is Randy.
Yeah, he's a Randy Dribble. Thanks, Thomas Pynchon. Good night,
Thomas.
everybody.
Jeez.
Randy Dribble is also the name of my custom player in NBA 2K.
Oh my god, that's such a good joke that 4 people will get.
Yeah, I know.
And
And
Duri
one of them is
doesn't
not
get it
me.
because she didn't waste
They don't actually
hundreds
listen
of
to this
hours
podcast.
playing 2K in college. Okay.
During this episode, Oedipa kind of calls back to the Maxwell demon situation. She's calling out to Driblet and then says, but as with Maxwell's demons, so now, either she could not communicate or he did not exist.
Another little binary opposition.
Yeah.
And then we kind of get to the home stretch here. We get the stuff about Turn and Taxis heading to America. She goes back to the scope and re-encounters Fallopian, who has a different vibe.
Playboy Mike Fallopian.
He's like a
hanging out with
playboy,
lot of
but
ladies.
he's a playboy, but he's also dressed as like Fidel Castro.
Yeah.
He like has a beard and he's dressed in jungle fatigues.
I mean, Fidel dressed swaggy. I don't think that's up for debate.
It's not. It just bothers Oedipa that Fallopian is now. He's like completed the turning into sort of like a leftist revolutionary by way of right-wing reactionism. He's completed the horseshoe.
Yeah, and she actually suggests to him that maybe he should go shop at the swastika surplus store. Which, once again, like, she was disgusted by this store. She thought about hitting this man over the head, and now she's, like, trying to give him business. And then he says, we're already in touch. Thanks.
Oh, I think this is, like, I think she's saying that caustically here. Because she thinks that he, like the guy in that store, is, like, a right-wing neo-Nazi blowhard who can, you know, get the hell off of his high horse, because he's basically saying, like, are you sure, like, what if this is all just like a little trick to make fun of you? And she's like, well, why don't you go to the swastika store and buy some armbands? And he's like, in fact, I've already got an order in. At least that's how I interpreted it.
Yeah, I mean, I read it as kind of sarcastic, but at the same time, like, she's like, mention my name. I don't know. This whole thing.
He could have not known about them and been like, that's a great idea. What's the address?
Yeah, what's the address? Well, she already, like, she tells him where it is. She's like over by the freeway. So she's like being sarcastic, but also in a real way is like possibly directing actual business to them.
It does seem like there's no reputable place of business anywhere near San Narciso.
No, the whole town of San Narciso is corrupt. I think that is like clear in this.
The whole town funded by Pierce, and they're either pedophiles, Nazis, or both. Pynchon's America, everybody.
There's some warmongers.
That's true. There are also warmongers.
And Emery Bortz and his wife.
Yeah.
Yeah, and upstanding citizen Emery Bortz.
Look, at least he's getting drunk with grad students and not undergrads. Not much better, but
again, low bar.
Throughout all of this, Oedipa's teeth start hurting. We haven't gotten a lot of Thomas Pynchon's teeth stuff, TM, in this book so far, but there's a lot of it here. Oedipa's like grinding her molars, and she's got a toothache, and it's related to her kind of like phantom pregnancy.
Yeah, she starts to have a lot of physical symptoms of her anxiety. She visits Genghis, or gets a call from Genghis Cohen, which finally tells us what the acronym WASTE stands for. We await silent Trustero's empire.
Ba-ba-bum.
And kind of all the information in this very last stretch that Oedipa gathers comes from Genghis Cohen.
Agent of Trastero, allegedly.
Well, we don't know that.
Again, there's at least one literary critic who seems convinced that this is the unavoidable conclusion.
He is feeding her a lot of information that she would not be getting from elsewhere. So whether he's just really good at digging into this mystery, or whether he has a source for this information, or whether he's sort of putting Oedipa on, remains to be seen.
And he's like showing her catalogs that have price stickers from Zapp's books, and then Oedipa realizes that Pierce also owned the Tank Theater where Driblet was putting on the play, and like it does start to seem like, well, the only unifying thing here is in fact Pierce inverarity.
Yeah, like he's sort of the key to the conspiracy. And then this is when Oedipus sort of starts to go into her spiral. I mean, she's been spiraling for the whole book, but like she begins to really spiral.
Come out of the groove again, as it were.
Yeah, it says, change your name to Miles, Dean, Serge, and or Leonard, baby. She advised her reflection.
Either way, they'll call it paranoia. That feels like a song right there.
They.
Either you have stumbled indeed without the aid of LSD or other indole alkaloids onto a secret richness and concealed density of dream, onto a network by which X number of Americans are truly communicating, or you're hallucinating it. And this is where she walks through her scenarios, where she's like considering whether this is a plot that she's made up or a plot that was laid out by Pierce against her, or a sort of giant web of conspiracy of America.
A little bit more information that we've already discussed at this point on the Tristero conspiracy.
She goes to a gynecologist, but then leaves.
Yeah, she goes to a gynecologist under Grace Bortz's name. The sort of like singular figuration of capital M motherhood we get in this book.
Yeah, and then we get the realization that the stamp collection, or at least the Tristero forgeries in the stamp collection, which we have kind of like a run through of a whole bunch of different visuals of the Tristero forgeries, any of which I think would make an interesting cover art. And
the one with the menacing smile on the face of the Statue of Liberty, for whatever reason, like unsettled me the most.
Yeah, they're all pretty unsettling.
I think we could get, if we like got in touch with the Postmaster General, we could get a line of stamps made, a Thomas Pynchon line, like commemorative line of stamps.
They're just very dark. Most graphic line of stamps. But these forgeries are going to be sold.
It's very patriotic. You see, the Statue of Liberty is smiling in this one. I love America, she seems to say.
But to get to the punchline, these forgeries are going to be sold as, dun dun dun, Lot 49.
Woohoo!
And we finally understand the title of the book. And Oedipa kind of gets a little suicidal at this point. She gets really drunk and then goes to drive the freeway to see what would happen. So
with
she's
her lights off. She's just
I didn't notice that. Oh God, with her lights out. Yeah.
I focused on that, and I didn't realize she was drunk until I think she gets on the phone with the Emirati. But yeah, I'm trying to find the line.
I've got it here. Oedipa went back to Echo Courts to drink bourbon until the sun went down and it was dark as it ever would get. Then she went out and drove on the freeway for a while with her lights out to see what would happen, but angels were watching.
Yeah, so she's sort of really immersed herself in this night or darkness that she seems most comfortable in.
Yeah, she is furthest from the sun at this point. There is no light. And then she finds this phone booth, a medium of communication, one might say. And calls.
Sort of crying.
Calls.
I laughed out loud when I got to the line.
I did too.
She calls the Greek way and asks for the Innamorato Anonymous. It says half a minute of clinking glasses, bursts of laughter, sounds of a jukebox. Then he came on. This is Arnold Snarb, she said, choking up. This is Arnold Snarb. It's so funny and tragic.
She's so broken.
What he says back is also just an excellent joke. I was in the little boys' room. The men's room was full. Is sort of, I mean, it does feel a little pedophile-y, but it's also a funny joke to say because calling it a little boy's room is.
Yes. Well, and it's also
infantilized thing.
Intentionally pedophilic because it's the Greek way is the name of the bar they're at. So, and once again, I mentioned the Platonic dialogue, the Phaedrus, which is all about like writing and communication and teaching, and also about erotic love and sort of pederasty in the Greek way, you might say.
So Arnold Snarb begs the Inamorati Anonymous for help because she's lost all of her other sort of male contacts and is desperate for someone to help her make sense of things.
Well, and specifically, she wants to know if he was put up. Like, if he was put up to this, she's like, the game is over. I'm done. I'm exhausted. Can you please just tell me if someone put you up to this for the sole purpose of making me go nuts?
And all he says is, it's too late for me. And then hangs up.
Yeah, it doesn't put her anxieties at ease.
No.
Oh.
And she starts walking the railroad tracks.
Yeah, this is her once again going, I think, in kind of Benny profane mode of thinking about the lost and the deprived and the people living by the railroad tracks and the people living under the freeways. And she thinks about, I quite liked this line, did it matter if Pierce owned all of San Narciso? San Narciso was a name, an incident among our climatic records of dreams, and what dreams became among our accumulated daylight, a moment's squall line or tornado's touchdown among the higher, more continental solemnities, storm systems of group suffering and need, prevailing winds of affluence. There was the true continuity. San Narciso had no boundaries. No one knew yet how to draw them. She had dedicated herself weeks ago to making sense of what Inverarity had left behind, never suspecting that the legacy was America.
Yeah, the whole passage here where she reflects on the sort of squatters and people in lean-tos and people on the side of the road walking felt very Steinbeck to me.
Mm-hmm. I particularly liked the image of these folks who spent the night up some pole in a lineman's tent like caterpillars swung among a web of telephone wires, living in the very copper rigging and secular miracle of communication, untroubled by the dumb voltages flickering their miles the night long in the thousands of unheard messages. Like, you have people living among the network of communication that they don't have any ready access to because they have been excluded from it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why broadband internet should be a public good, you know? I think Thomas Pynchon would agree. Just read, if y'all don't mind, there's two other little passages here that I think are quite revealing. This idea of searching ceaseless among the dials, 10 million possibilities. Again, we got the radio back for that magical other who would reveal herself out of the roar of relays, monotone litanies of insult, filth, fantasy, love, whose brute repetition must someday call into being the trigger for the unnameable act, the recognition, the word, capital W. And then she imagines walking around the matrices of a great digital computer, zeros and ones twinned above, hanging like balanced mobiles right and left, ahead, thick, maybe endless. Behind the hieroglyphic streets, there would either be a transcendent meeting or only the earth. A little later on, for there was either some Tristero beyond the appearance of the legacy America, or there was just America. And if there was just America, then it seemed the only way she could continue and manage to be at all relevant to it was as an alien, unfurrowed, assumed full circle into some paranoia.
Did anyone else's book have a typo in this passage?
Which one?
The one you just read.
What is the typo?
Instead of saying the only way she could continue, my book says the only was she could continue.
Mine says the only way. Perhaps, how did you get into the Vatican archives?
Wait, which page is this on?
151.
151.
There are actually two typos I noticed in this chapter. I didn't mark the other one, though, so I don't know.
I have a typo that was not in y'all's book, in my book. But again, I'm on the, I think, first American paperback, Bantam edition.
Oh, yeah, I see. The only was. Oh, yeah, I guess we do have the same copy.
Yeah, we have the same copy. Just a little note for the editors, or maybe Thomas Pynchon said to throw in a few variations to put us in Oedipus' shoes.
Who's the publisher on your book?
It's Bantam.
To
It's
make
the first American paperback, I think.
I have Harper Perennial Modern Classics.
Oof.
Yeah.
Gotta watch out for Harper Perennial.
I was gonna see if it's like Harper HRAPER.
Harper.
Mine says harder perineum. Do y'all's it's my poor attempt at a pynchon pluralism.
And then Oedipa goes, so she kind of decides, she has this realization about America, and then it says, the next day, with courage you find when there is nothing more to lose. She got in touch with C. Morris Shrift and inquired after his mysterious client. And he reveals that the mysterious client who is going to buy these stamps is going to actually attend the auction in person. And so Oedipa decides to go to the auction in person. And first person she runs into is Genghis Cohen. And then they go into the room, and the auctioneer is named Lauren Passerine. And Genghis says he will be crying today. And we learn that crying is what the auctioneer does. So he's crying lot 49.
And Oedipa stands in a patch of sun.
Yes, she stands in a patch of
Voluntarily.
sun, but then enters a room that has no sun and is
the
filled
windows
with
are-
men wearing black mohair with pale, cruel faces. And then I think in a callback to our Remedios Varo painting, Lauren Passerine on his podium hovered like a puppet master, and he spreads his arms in a gesture that seemed to belong to the priesthood of some remote culture, perhaps to a descending angel.
Yeah, we get a lot of back and forth between like angels and dark angels. Like the angels were watching Oedipa in the darkness, but then we have these dark angels of Tristero that seemingly descend at random to protect or further their interests.
Yeah, so Oedipa's fate is a little unclear. It's a little unclear if she's like stepped into this room and is like, the room is snapped shut on her, and is she going to be like swallowed up or destroyed by Tristero? In this room, it kind of feels like maybe.
Well, she sort of tells us the two options. Either she continues believing in Tristero, or she chalks it all up to this is just what America is. And if she talks it up to this is just what America is, then she is necessarily alien to it. Like whatever it was, the comfortable normalcy, normativity of her life prior to this is gone. I mean, it's gone either way, kind of. But she is sort of alienated from whatever the machinery is of this great American project.
Yeah, in a sort of stencil-esque way. Like either there's a vast conspiracy or the world is just awful and chaotic and cruel. But I was kind of wondering, like, I don't know, it was a very foreboding image of her stepping into this, like one woman again, stepping into this room of cruel looking men, this dark angel, sunless room, the doors shut behind her. I almost felt like the next scene could be the men like all kind of take her out and like a Tristero style assassination.
They could just all be Tristero agents.
Yeah.
Who we know wear dark suits.
And they've now
who wear dark.
trapped Oedipa in this space and are gonna destroy her.
I mean, in some ways, it's a little bit like a rabbit trap or something.
Mm-hmm. It like closes on her.
Yeah,
Snaps shut.
yeah, it falls over top of her.
I want to say, Genghis Cohen is clearly here for some lovely Mozambique triangle stamps, not for the lot 49 stuff.
So he says,
the textual evidence says that he's not.
He's not involved. Yeah.
That's my rebuttal to that one critic. I'm just gonna hit him with this line.
Yeah.
Lovely Mozambique triangles.
J. Cary Grant has an interesting little bit here, tying some of these themes back into the image of the Pentecost, where like the wind whips up language and people speak in tongues at the very end, and references Tanner's reading, quote, as Edward Mendelsohn has pointed out, 49 is the Pentecostal number, the Sunday 7 weeks after Easter. But Pentecost derives from Greek for 50. So the moment at the end of the book when the auctioneers spread arms are specifically likened to a gesture or culture is like the moment before a Pentecostal revelation when we would all be able to speak in tongues and be able to understand the word directly.
This is lot 49.
Yeah, this is lot 49.
And we have that reference to the word. So maybe there's also another interpretation where like Oedipa finally understands in this room.
Yeah, is this the revelation of the word, or is this the closure of the possibility of ever achieving transcendental meaning? We'll never know. Or a third thing that is not confined within that binary opposition.
Pynchon loves to leave us hanging. I do really I liked what you said earlier, Patrick, about conceptualizing this as a coming of age novel a little bit. It's kind of like Oedipa's quarter life crisis. And she really goes through this. I do feel like she really goes through this period of growth and realization throughout the book. It doesn't end really in a happy place. Like she doesn't realize good things, but the world is not necessarily a good place either. So I do feel like she goes through this coming of age. I liked that framing.
Yeah, she comes a long way from being drunk off of some fondue.
Yeah, I feel like the whole book
party.
is kind of about like ignorance versus like, or maybe not ignorance, but like ignoring. Maybe that is.
Yeah.
Suddenly those words sound a lot alike. But ignoring the realities that are around you versus starting to open your eyes to like what your wealth and privilege is built on.
Well, it's not just ignoring them. It's like Oedipa realizes she didn't know how to like articulate some of these questions. Like she didn't know that they were. I keep thinking about that line where she was like, I was never taught that the U.S. mail, like that there was any problems with the U.S. mail, but now I understand.
Yeah, but she doesn't have any path. Like she doesn't have any path forward in terms of what to do.
Yeah.
Now that she understands, or she has this big picture view, like she kind of just has like spiraling into despair. She doesn't see a path forward that involves any sort of action or, I don't know, any sort of actionable next steps. Like, not to connect back to V once again, but I feel like this realization sort of puts her in a little bit of a state of inanimacy where she is unable to take action on the world and kind of paralyzed.
Which is not dissimilar from the state she starts the book in. Also, R.I.P. Oedipa Maas, you would have loved posting about social justice movements on social media. Really,
that could have given her an outlet
really could
to
have
save
given
her from her despair.
A psychological outlet. Andrew, you have any final thoughts on chapter 6 before maybe we take a break and then come back to talk about the book as a whole and our dream cast for the film adaptation?
I feel like Oedipa's sort of in the Matrix, or like sort of, you know how in the Matrix when they break out of the Matrix, in the end of the first act,
yeah,
I feel like it's kind of like that. Like there's a good, at the beginning of the novel, Oedipa as like a suburban housewife in California is very much part of the system, and through her like stripping away of her old life, she certainly moved closer to the target audience of Trastero. We didn't talk about this specific line, but when she's hanging out with Fallopian in this scene, she sort of explains everything she's found out, and he's like, do I look like an outcast to you? Which I thought was very funny.
Especially given his outfit.
But yeah. But like she has become an outcast. Like she has, whether this system is real or not, she has removed herself from the old life she has, and she's not going back to it.
Yeah, she repeatedly references like feeling alienated, being alien. So I think you're right. She has sort of alienated herself from her old life.
Yeah, if you go to like, I caught this somewhere online, not necessarily from this source, but I think if you go to like Spark Notes or something for this book, because it's often assigned in college classes and occasionally high school classes, like one of the big themes that comes up, and we have not really talked about it so much in these words, is like inside versus outside, and like what it means to be inside something that is outside something else. Or we have the image of these grooves that Oedipa occasionally jumps out of or is unfurrowed, which I think that ties into that, even if we did not discuss so much in those exact terms.
Yeah, there's a lot of like, we have the inside male system and the outside male system, and this is operating in secret in the shadows versus in the mainstream.
But in order to do that, you have to be inside a conspiracy that is outside of the mainstream.
Yeah, and sometimes the people on the outside are like the people who are excluded from the system and are just trying to get by and communicate with each other. But then other times the people on the outside are bad actors.
Your neo-Nazis, your
the
other kinds
the fringes.
of neo-Nazis, your warmongers and profiteers.
And then you find out that the people that you thought were on the outside are actually on the inside.
It's rough stuff. Shall we take a break here and reconvene for a little debrief of the book?
Yes, let's.
Let's do it. Pynchon Pals will be right back after this. And welcome back. How's it going, listening public? We are here to talk about our wrap-up thoughts on the book.
I thought you were going to ask us how we were doing.
How are y'all doing?
Pretty good. I just had an avocado toast.
Wow. So we're still contributing to the downfall of the the millennial economic prospects with the avocado toasts.
You know?
Wow.
It's a classic now.
Yeah. I understand.
I've had some chips and salsa during the break.
I had a bowl of cereal.
I was considering chips and salsa as an option.
Listener, what did you have over our break? Maybe a couple of stoplights. Maybe you got called in for your dental appointment.
Maybe
Wherever
your coworkers called you over.
Maybe your coworkers called you over. You had to do a stand-up meeting. Wherever you are, thanks for coming back. We're glad you're here.
I have a wrap-up question.
Okay.
It's not really that innovative. It's just, did you all, now that we've gotten through 2 Pynchon novels, which one did you like better?
I like this book better. This book, I'm glad I read V. It only made me like this book more because I realized how much, like, I got the impression reading this book as my intro to Pynchon that, like, oh, these seem to be like a lot of themes that an author might work through over the course of several novels. And it was heartening and illuminating to find that, yeah, that's absolutely the case. Like, there's a lot going on here that are riffs on or deepenings of some stuff that was working in V. And I just like, I mean, I might be a sucker for like very, very dense writing, but like the claustrophobia of this book and like the episodic kind of hard-boiled detective-y mystery story kind of thing just worked for me a lot. And I also think Edna Mosh remains maybe one of my favorite characters in all of fiction. Like, I just think she is really, really fascinating. And on the surface, like a everyday, ordinary kind of character, but she contains like a lot of interesting little quirks, and yeah, I find her really layered and nuanced.
I think I'll also go with this one as I liking it more. I think the mystery gives it a good structure that V doesn't necessarily have. V is very free form. You just sort of drift. It
Some
feels
jazz,
like
baby.
I do think it would have been better if it was longer. I think I said this already once, but the sort of density and sort of the speed at which that we're sometimes introduced to new clues, I think it would have done the book good if some of the ways that we saw in V, these sort of long extended passages on individual topics. If I think you'd seen more of that here, I think it could have been really enjoyable, where you sort of get lost in the clue instead of just a rapid fire list of clues that are presented in a short period of time.
Yeah, I said it a little bit facetiously, but I'm now going to say it authoritatively with all the power of a literary critic. V is kind of like a jazz performance, and The Crying of Lot 49 is like a really tight pop song. Like it's a Beatles-esque, like 2 minutes 30 seconds in and out.
I'm gonna
jolt
offer
of energy.
A hot take and say that I like the jazz performance better. I definitely liked V more than this book in terms of a reading experience. I liked the different perspectives and like hopping between different characters and time periods that was in V. I found the historical situating of V to be a lot more interesting than the historical passages in The Crying of Lot 49. Well, it's situated instead of just like reportage. Yeah, we're not just like, oh yes, this is what was happening. Like we're reading a history book, which I felt like was some of the historical components of The Crying of Lot 49. It's like we're hearing about it from a perspective, or in some cases, multiple perspectives, or we're telling another story that's just situated in a different time. And I think we've learned by now that Thomas Pynchon writes really good characters. And I really like Edna Mosh as a character as well. I got attached to her as a character, but there's so many more characters that I got attached to and interested in V. Like there was just so many more characters with meat. The Crying of Lot 49 is so short that they didn't really have time to build out interiority of any of the other characters. And so I actually didn't really like anyone else very much in The Crying of Lot 49, or I wasn't invested in anyone else's future besides Oedipa. And it is, I mean, maybe that's the point. Like it's a very Oedipa-centered story. The world's kind of revolving around her. She's going through her coming of age. That's the focus of the novel. But I think in terms of reading material, I enjoyed V more. And I usually like a slim volume, but I felt like V really let me like sit with some of these ideas that Pynchon was introducing. And
how would you have felt if The Crying of Lot 49 just had a 70-page chapter on Diocletian Blob and early Trastero history?
I think it might have helped
because I feel
me.
like I feel like that's what I was the point I want to make is that if Crying of Lot 49 was like 450 pages and we had 50 pages on stamps and we had 50 pages on the guy's granddad who worked for the Pony Express, and we had 50 pages on the Low Country fight for independence.
And I want either like the first person perspective or the stencilized version. Like I want to go into the story and not just have it read like a report. I think I would have enjoyed that more because I just felt like I kept missing stuff and it was so dense. And maybe I just am like not used to reading books that are quite this dense, but I had to keep going back. And I feel like I need to go back again. Like I feel like you read a page and unless you're paying like extremely close attention to every single word, you kind of miss information in The Crying of Lot 49.
Yeah, I think it's Italo Calvino or Umberto Eco. I want to say it's an Italian sort of
Umberto Eco Quartz.
Yeah. Ooh. Hang on. Let me change my Blue Sky
Jeopardy,
handle.
Wait. Someone write a Jeopardy clue right now.
But someone has a quote that is something like, there's a distinction between armchair reading and desktop reading. And The Crying of Lot 49 looks like armchair reading, but is in fact desktop reading.
I think that's a really good clarification. And I felt like, and not that I'm saying that V is an easy, light read, but I do feel like it had enough breathing room that you could read it a little bit more casually and still get you could read it in an armchair and still get the point.
I think that's the function of a lot of the whole Sick Crew chapters. Like, there's a lot of breathing room in V. And I think maybe a weakness of V for me is that it's kind of either one thing or the other thing. And it, like, you can tell when it's kind of switching gears. And I think Lot 49, to keep with the car metaphor, has like just a little bit smoother acceleration and deceleration, or is maybe just accelerating the entire time, but it doesn't have those really obvious kind of gear switches.
Yeah, I may also have just liked the writing style of V a little bit more.
You're in good company. So does Thomas Pynchon.
Yeah, I think I liked the framing devices he used. I liked all the dialogue that was happening. Like, he writes really good dialogue between characters, and I feel like we did not get to see that a ton in The Crying of Lot 49. A little bit in certain spots. Kind
of in the Metzger Oedipa hotel room.
And like when she goes back to the scope, but otherwise she's not really having too much. It's like one line of dialogue here and there. We don't get to see as much like characters playing off of each other. I don't know. I think I liked the writing style of V a little bit more. Also, like, I think in the sense of there being more breathing room, like there were some dense passages in V, but then they would kind of open up a little bit or shift into a different gear. And I feel like most of this book was kind of a dense passage. Which is, it's interesting to me that this is kind of the introduction to Thomas Pynchon, and because of its length is sort of what people might read in a high school. Whereas I mean, I don't know that I want to assign my high schoolers V, but I wonder if some of his longer books might actually be easier to.
There is actually no good entry point into Thomas Pynchon, because you're either going to say Gravity's Rainbow, which is intimidating, V, which is intimidating, and also sort of an earlier work, or this, which is short.
Maybe Shadow Ticket.
Well, I have seen a lot of people say Inherent Vice is a good one to recommend people when we'll get there when we get there. But that was actually going to be my question, is how would you feel about Thomas Pynchon if this were your introduction? Like, do you feel that this works as a second book in a particular way? And I'm asking that in part for my own curiosity, since I did come to the author this way.
I think I would feel a little less excited to read the rest of Thomas Pynchon than starting with V. But V energized me.
But if you hadn't read V, and you were coming into Thomas Pynchon here,
I think I would be less excited than I was. I think I'd also be a little confused. I feel like V really gave me the groundwork that I needed to make sense of this book. And if I did not have that groundwork, I feel like I would have been a little lost in Yo-Yo Dine and what like these different themes are that are coming up. And I felt like I had the groundwork of the themes that I knew Pynchon was interested in, even like the informatics stuff.
Yeah.
And that helped me make sense of this book. Yeah.
I do think reading an author's first book is usually a good idea for a starting point for like that reason, where like, or I guess especially with like what Patrick was saying, where like the themes that are hit on really hard here, we do see in a lighter way in V. And I think that's relatively common with authors. I think you'd be in for a rude awakening if you read this and then went to V and you're just sort of out in the sprawling sea. After like fording a river, you're now asked to swim the Atlantic Ocean. It might be, I could see that being a hard transition to make, while going the other way we've sort of waded into the deep waters of V and been lost at sea. And here we could always see the other side.
Yeah, that's true. I do think, like, it's interesting. Like, we had sort of all agreed we were at least going to finish V because we were doing a trying to record a podcast about it. But, like, I could see the opening chapter of V being a bit more of a turnoff to some people than the opening chapter of Lot 49. Of, like, Lot 49, you've got, like, a compelling character who's, like, in a relatively ordinary situation. There's, like, a clear inciting incident. Meanwhile, with V, if you're just sort of reading it in your own time, it's like, okay, there's this guy, Benny Profane, and all of his friends are really weird, and it's a parade of debauchery, and Suck Hour shows up, like, within 6 pages.
Yeah, it takes us a little bit in V to get into the mystery. And even then, the mystery is a little less coherent than it is in The Crying of Lot 49. But yeah, I don't know. V is really about the characters.
What do we think Crying of Lot 49 is about?
America.
Okay. Expand on that.
Womanhood.
Expand on that.
Andrew, you look like you want to say something.
Oh, no, I was waiting for you to expand on American
you're waiting for me to expand.
Expand on American womanhood in The Crying of Lot 49.
I mean, so I think Pynchon, so there's some of the themes from V that show up here, like the military industrial complex, this idea of like chaos and conspiracy and atrocity, but it really becomes like an American story, I feel like, in The Crying of Lot 49. Like, we jump to California. It's about Western expansionism. It's about like sprawling suburbia and freeways and this sort of changing landscape of America, the growth of Silicon Valley, the kind of California ethos of Pierce and Verity and his quest for sort of ownership and dominance and egotism, which feels a lot like both sort of like railroad and like gold rush moguls, but also like Silicon Valley. And I feel like Oedipa is sort of constantly reflecting throughout the book, and especially at the end, on her relationship to, quote, the Republic and America and the U.S. postal system and this like web of different things that is America's connections and implications to far off wars or atrocities that are committed elsewhere, and how those sort of are echoed, or the bones of those atrocities show up in actual America. I felt like it was Oedipa, former young Republican, sort of trying to make sense of what she realizes sort of a vastly more complex America than she had maybe originally taken it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And womanhood, I think. I do think Thomas Pynchon is exploring the sort of like womanhood in the 60s and this idea of the suburban housewife. And I think Oedipa is a really interesting female character. And like you said, Patrick, we get to see her kind of coming of age, quarter life crisis, and how she relates to men and how she navigates the world, sort of using her womanhood. And I think she does have some growth over the course of the book, unlike maybe some of the characters in V. I feel like she does have growth in terms of having to figure out how to operate in the world without all of these men that she sort of used to define herself, and sort of growing in her complexity. I don't know if she really grows in her, maybe she grows a little bit in her confidence to investigate or explore. Like, she kind of moves beyond her narrative. She could have just stayed a suburban housewife. She could have said, no, I'm not interested in executing this will, handed it off to the law firm, stayed with Mucho, continued having her fondue parties. And instead she kind of pursued this grand mystery. And I'm not sure it led her to a necessarily better place, but she did sort of open herself up to knowledge. I kind of left the theme of womanhood a while ago, but I'm rambling now.
She could have executed the will and just decided to put up the blinders on all of this. Like, she sort of stumbles into the mystery, but she really doubles down early on, where she could have been like, that's a fun coincidence. Anyway, how much are these stamps worth? Let's keep a move on. Let's sell his shares in Yo-Yo Dine and be done with it all. And she absolutely does not do that.
Yeah, there's a sort of infamous article about the crying of Lot 49 called Pynchon, JFK, and the CIA Magic Eye Views of the Crying of Lot 49, which was published, I think, in 1997 by Charles Hollander. And it's this article that makes the rounds a lot in conversations about this book online, especially from the sort of conspiratorial, like, what did Thomas Pynchon know sort of angle, and like Thomas Pynchon's ties or references to the intelligence community and et cetera, et cetera. And it kind of makes the point that The Crying of Lot 49 is a book about the JFK assassination without ever mentioning the JFK assassination. But it is about the kind of like boiling point of like violence and confusion and conspiracy that sort of suffuse the United States in this like turbulent early 60s.
That's interesting, because like when you lose trust in the institutions that exist, including perhaps the most well-trusted institution in the U.S. government, the U.S. Mail Service, I think polls show that.
Yeah, they do.
And when you lose trust in the systems, then people kind of retreat into conspiracy and these conspiratorial spaces. And I think we've seen a lot of think pieces on this more recently with everything from like 9/11 conspiracies to QAnon.
Yeah.
But I do think the JFK assassination was kind of the civil rights movement and
that,
things
well, and
surrounding
that's why
that was kind of the beginning of those conspiratorial mindsets in America.
Which is why it's kind of called the magic eye reading, because the idea is that like, what is the thing that would be seen in this portrait, but you kind of have to unfocus your gaze because it's not explicitly spelled out, which is a certain kind of what you might call like a paranoid reading of a text, and whether or not that is a useful way of thinking about any literary text or other kind of text is debatable. But like, this book was published in 1966. John F. Kennedy was assassinated in 1963. The book seems to take place because they mention the quote unquote early 60s, but like this pretty titanic event in American history is just not referenced really in any direct way, which is interesting. So says, this article.
Well, and I guess we get a nod towards the growing distrust in government that's happening through the Berkeley protests that we see. But it is a very tumultuous time in American history. And so it kind of makes sense that Oedipa would maybe, like in this particular moment in time, I know she's spurred by the will, but maybe she would be more inclined to be sort of shaken out of her comfort zone and her existing interpretations and feelings towards the American government than she would have been in, say, 1950.
She sort of finds out repeatedly through this book that everyone is sort of part of another group, and she's always on the outside. She's like the Scope, the Waste, WAST, Trastero. Like there's always a
graduate school,
IA.
Yeah, there's all of these groups that these people are part of, and she's always been sort of skirting over the surface like a stone, and she's like sinking.
She also has no friends.
No friends.
She has not a single friend in this book.
Yeah, well,
who is at the Tupperware party? It's not like she goes over to like Bernice's house and like chats about Trastero.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if it's other sort of like Grace Bortzes.
Yeah.
Who are at the
Yeah.
Tupperware party, and Oedipa like doesn't relate to them, or it seems to me like Oedipa was maybe not a girl's girl. And I could see Oedipa maybe trying to attract the attention of some of her lady friends' husbands, and maybe that didn't go over so well. If we're building some of her backstory in suburbia, I could see her not maybe being the most popular housewife on the block.
Damn, you are putting Oedipa on hypothetical blast.
I'm just saying, I think that's her vibe. Like she walks into a room and she likes all the men to look at her, and when they don't, she's like, "What's going on?" And it's not till she leaves her sort of comfort zone that she realizes that that's not the case everywhere. But it seems like maybe all of the men in her neighborhood were looking at her.
Hmm.
And she seems more interested in that type of attention than like connecting with other female friends.
Well, it does seem that her and Mucho have something of a peculiarly open arrangement, even before the start of the novel.
Yeah, she's kind of giving like the Eva Longoria of the block, if anyone has watched Desperate Housewives.
Well, maybe that brings us to the next portion of our program tonight, which is who would we cast in a film adaptation?
Wait, can I ask one question to the group before we go into our casting? What do you guys think of this book as a mystery? Like in the pantheon of mysteries, I feel like you have your Agatha Christie, Hercule Poirot, where there's like a death and you're sort of meticulously hitting the clues, and you've got your Boxcar Children, which I will say I thought this book was going to go Boxcar Children for a while, and I really hate the Boxcar Children because they never did. I hate the Boxcar Children. They never once did anything active. This is a grievance I've had.
Great house.
This is a grievance I've had for 25 years in my life.
Speak on it.
Where they never once did anything active. They would just like go get ice cream, and the bad guy would also be at the ice cream park. Like they never did anything, but yet they always solved the mystery. And I feel like that is a type of mystery that exists, where you just sort of stumble your way blindly through it.
I'll say to your point, Andrew, I did not remember that the Boxcar Children were mystery books. I just really liked their lifestyle, and
they were mystery books where they did no active mystery solving.
They were too busy figuring out how to live in a boxcar.
And then I guess you've also got the kind of mysteries that I think of are sort of the James Bond-esque mysteries that are actually just action books where you like in the first couple chapters you know what is happening. They just have to like execute through it. And I feel like this book sort of sits in the you don't know there's a mystery going on, and even once you find out there's a mystery, you don't know what it is. Like it's unclear what she's attempting to solve for a long time. I can't think of a key text in that type of mystery genre that I just can't think of a good one. But they do exist, and I just wanted to know what you guys think about this is a mystery book. Like, would you recommend it to your, I don't know, mystery heads out there? Should it be in the mystery section at a bookstore?
I think if someone likes like conspiracy mysteries, I could see, or like a little bit of a dark, like a Jean le Carré style novel. I would recommend V first for Jean le Carré, but I could see them being into it. It just doesn't. No one who's looking for a satisfying solution should read this book. Or I'm gathering, possibly. I don't think that's what you're going to get at. You're not going to get that out of Thomas Pynchon, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, I think this book has a lot in common with, you have your sort of like classical mystery stories where part of the fun is that you, the reader, there's a certain kind of classical mystery story where you, the reader, are given all of the clues, and it's like part of the fun or the game of the book is you can try and figure out the mystery before it's revealed at the end. And then there's a different type that's really more in the Sherlock Holmes vein, where because Dr. Watson is narrating the stories, you are not given access to all of the information. And so the pleasure of the book comes from like, at the end of the book, Sherlock is going to say some wild shit that you had no way of knowing before, but it's going to be kind of like clockwork and fun and sort of like an ingenious solution to a seemingly impossible problem. And then you have the sort of like hard-boiled tradition where sometimes there's a mystery, but it's not really solved by clues so much as it's solved by like, you know, tailing someone around town or paying off an informant who might know more than someone else does, or you know, the murder is not done through any kind of quirky puzzle box. It is instead done with like a knife in an alley for not a particularly interesting reason. And Raymond Chandler has a kind of famous essay about this that I'll toss in the show notes called The Simple Art of Murder, where he talks about specifically Dashiell Hammett. Who didn't Dashiell Hammett come up in V at some point? I feel like
Dashiell's a name that you don't hear often.
Yeah, we talked about Dashiell Hammett for some reason on the podcast in one of the V episodes, I think. So I think it's perfectly likely that Thomas Pynchon is a fan of Hammett. But he was writing in the 30s and is kind of the progenitor of the hard-boiled genre that Raymond Chandler and others would sort of pick up upon to some extent. And part of Chandler's point is like, yeah, the mystery oftentimes isn't so much as like a grand puzzle to be solved, so much as like people commit crimes for sort of base, stupid reasons. And part of the pleasure of these books is like the interiority and the travails of like the detective figure, where like Sherlock Holmes is not much of a character, but the Continental Op in a Dashiell Hammett story like is a really interesting character, even if you don't know very much about him like personally. There is yeah, here it is. I was trying to find it here. Raymond Chandler talks about like the figure of the detective in these stories, which I feel like does kind of describe Oedipa to some extent. Chandler writes of the detective, he is a relatively poor man, or he would not be a detective at all. He is a common man, or he could not go among common people. He has a sense of character, or he would not know his job. He will take no man's money dishonestly, and no man's insolence without a due and dispassionate revenge. He is a lonely man, and his pride is that you will treat him as a proud man, or be very sorry you ever saw him. He talks as the man of his age talks, that is, with rude wit, a lively sense of the grotesque, a disgust for sham, and a contempt for pettiness. The story is this man's adventure in search of a hidden truth, and it would be no adventure if it did not happen to a man fit for adventure. He has a range of awareness that startles you, but it belongs to him by right, because it belongs to the world he lives in. If there were enough like him, the world would be a very safe place to live in, without becoming too dull to be worth living in. And I think there's ways in which Oedipa as a character kind of like worms around that kind of definition of like, she's not exactly like poor or rough and tumble, but she does have a really perceptive sense of awareness and a certain sense of right and wrong, even if sometimes it's misinformed. And, you know, you don't always know exactly what's going through her head, but she feels very consistent and she kind of wants to figure out what's happening, and you, the reader, also want to know what is happening, even if you can't always exactly get a read on why she wants to know.
You should watch Who Framed Roger Rabbit for the Patreon. I feel like that's a good example of a noir where it sort of spirals out of control. Who Censored Roger Rabbit? The book is also good, but I don't want to read a book for the Patreon.
The book podcast?
The book, yeah.
Yeah, if you want us to watch Who Framed Roger Rabbit for the... I've been trying to get Duri to watch that movie for years.
Duri's never... We should do it just because
refuses.
Duri's never seen Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It's so good.
I don't like
Duri,
the
it's whimsical.
cartoon plus regular movie vibe.
We could read the book where it's
I just don't like adult
a book
cartoons.
of a cartoon.
It is not... I think you are thinking that Who Framed Roger Rabbit is a much more like seedier and adult-oriented movie than it actually is.
Yeah, it is a... Well,
I just feel like
that's
that
why
one
we
cartoon felt very sexual.
Well, yeah.
Which,
yeah.
like, I feel sexual cartoons make me uncomfortable.
She's just the Betty Boop, and Betty Boop was a real cartoon. Although
She's
Betty
not-
Boop is
Betty
part of
Boop
the
makes
genre
me
of cartoons that
uncomfortable.
makes me out.
Yeah.
That's fair.
She's not a bad girl. She's
The
just
Jessica
drawn that way.
Rabbit
No.
cartoon
Yeah,
makes me uncomfortable.
Who Framed Roger Rabbit is such a good movie. The book Who Censored Roger Rabbit is what you're thinking of, Duri. It's very seedy and like very screwed up. But the cartoon was made, or the TV show, or the half live action, half drawn cartoon was made by like Disney. Like it is like PG-13, and yeah, Jessica Rabbit is sexy, but it's instantly made like the gag of a joke, and she kicks ass, literally and figuratively.
Only for the Patreon.
Someone please write in and request that we do this so Duri is compelled.
Speaking of movies, do we want to?
Yeah,
Cast?
I think that's a second attempt at
I'm
this
casting
segue.
Jessica Rabbit as Oedipus Moss.
A cartoon, an animated. No, a cartoon. I don't want it to be animated. A cartoon. Crying of Lot 49 could be good.
You mean like a comic
like hand
book?
drawn? No,
Oh.
like a. Yeah, I'm animated, but like drawn by hand. I don't want
Okay. Yeah.
someone. I don't want someone's computer making it.
No 3D animated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want a team of underpaid Disney employees drawing for months.
Jimmy Neutron ass crying of Lot 49. No, not doing that. So I know I've been talking up how much I admire Oedipus as a character.
I was just thinking of an anime, Crying of Lot 49.
Ugh. No, animes are too.
I don't know, like I
There's
have
no
like
way
the
for anyone
noirish
to know.
vibe.
I could see it.
Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry, I interrupted you, Patrick.
I've been talking up my admiration for Oedipus as a character for a long time, and this what I'm about to say might give people the wrong impression about my selection here. But as I was reading this book and thinking about who I would want in the role of Oedipus Moss, I couldn't get out of my head that in order to really capture the sort of like card-carrying young Republican vibe of Oedipus, I think you put Sydney Sweeney as Oedipus Moss.
You told me that at the beginning of this book, and I have been picturing Sydney Sweeney as Oedipus Moss throughout the entire novel.
Now I got to the end of the book and I was like, there's a lot of like capital A acting and interiority that needs to happen towards the end of this book that in a film context might need to be portrayed more or less through like, you know, facial acting and emoting, which are perhaps not Miss Sweeney's demonstrated strong suits, although maybe she could get there, you know, with the right directing.
I remember you saying this, Patrick. And in my head, I instantly rejected it. And I went for the actress in Hollywood who is the anti-Sydney Sweeney, who I also, at probably around the same time, maybe a little bit after that, starred as a 1970s housewife in The Mastermind, Alana Haim. It's time for her to have a starring role, and I think she can pull off housewife turned paranoid detective.
I could see that.
I will say, and I mean this as no shade to Alana Haim, I think Oedipus Moss has a very overtly sexual energy that Sydney Sweeney might convey at least that portion of Oedipus Moss more effectively.
Okay, so
That's all I'll
who's
say.
your pick for
who's splitting the
sexiest
difference, Duri?
actress to play Oedipus Moss?
I liked your Sydney Sweeney pick.
Oh, okay.
Honestly, I'm sorry, that's a boring answer, but I mean, like.
All right, don't look. I'm gonna look up Maxim sexiest actress 2025.
It's not just about like sexiness. I feel like it's the vibe of like I was the hottest girl in the room in high school and college, and I'm shocked when I walk into a room and men don't look at me.
Yeah, I do think that is a vibe.
I feel like that's a vibe Oedipa is giving off as a woman, and like does not understand when her feminine wiles do not work for her because she has been used to being sort of ogled after for her entire life. And I feel like you do need someone with that sort of like hot girl energy.
Yeah. Do we want to cast anybody else in this production? Do we have any ideal Metzger picks?
I thought about Austin Butler from Metzger. I think he could do it.
I like that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's not the craziest pick there is, but
I had forgotten when we were talking about casting V that I suggested Walton Goggins for Rooney Winsome, and I'd forgotten that I also thought about Adam Driver as Rooney Winsome. And I think Adam Driver could also make a good Metzger.
What about Margot Robbie?
Margot Robbie. I did think about Margot Robbie.
As Oedipa.
After seeing Wuthering Heights, I did consider Margot Robbie. You just get Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi as Metzger and Oedipa.
But Metzger is supposed to be very, interesting.
He's tall, dark, and handsome.
Tall and handsome.
In the Wuthering Heights vein, the movie is just up to the hotel room, and that's where the end credits roll. Nothing else occurs in line with the book.
I guess we didn't need to execute the will at all. And boy, am I glad the mail system works.
I thought John Malkovich would be good for Dr. Hilarious.
Oh, sure.
John Malkovich, star of Becoming John Malkovich.
Yes.
I don't know if I've seen him before. I was trying to look up, trying to figure out who would be a good Metzger. I feel like it's like a little bit more like classically like a movie star handsome.
Yeah, I like a young George Clooney would work as like a Metzger. I do know what you mean, that it needs to like.
I was contemplating if John Hamm could pull it off.
I think the problem is that Metzger is supposed to be like 35, but yes, I do think like a Mad Men era John Hamm.
Yeah.
Great for Metzger. Who's a good I don't have a good picture of Mucho like in my brain.
Yeah. Mucho's not really in this book. Does he need to be cast?
I have someone in my head for Mucho. Who is it? It'll come to me.
I know he shaves a lot, and I know he
doesn't have a mustache.
He doesn't have a mustache, and
I think
he's a pedophile. Those are the two.
My vibe is, after I dwelled on him a little bit, I know we had some like confusion about his ethnicity earlier on in the book, but kind of came around to the idea that like, did we come around to the idea that he's like a white man?
I think I may have cut this entire conversation because it was basically unsalvageable.
It was unsalvageable. We were just very confused.
We were just like, he might be Hungarian.
It took, anyways, but cut or not for the podcast, we had some confusion about Mucho's ethnicity, and I think I came around to the conclusion that he's just like a blonde white man who's like trying to.
Moss is a Dutch. Sir, oh shit, he's from the Low Countries.
Oh.
We talked to, I feel like in the conversation, I referenced Sarah J. Maas.
Yes, you did. But again, I cut this whole conversation. Now our listeners are just going to be super confused as to what conversation. It's in the Quarto edition of Pynchon Pals.
Yeah, for the listeners, we circled around on his ethnicity and apparently we're very close to a pivotal clue and then went away from it entirely.
I'm picturing someone very specific in my head for him, and I
Can you think of what film or television program?
I'm picturing someone sort of like blonde, slick backed hair, like maybe like a toothpick or a cigarette in their mouth. It'll come to me.
Okay. Toothpick or cigarette.
I'll work on it.
Okay.
I'll work on it. Don't worry about it.
Who was the guy? You know who's an actor I always like seeing who I don't see enough of? And it's
Richard
maybe
Kind.
No, that's true. You can never Richard Kind as Mucho Moss.
Oh no, I thought you were pivoting to someone else.
No,
I want Richard Kind to be Genghis Cohen.
Oh, that'd be really good. That'd be okay. Yeah, that's great. No, the guy who played young Han Solo in Young Han Solo, Alden Ehrenreich. I always like him and stuff. I'm gonna put him in this movie. Maybe he could be Mucho. I could see him as a used car salesman.
We were talking about this, Patrick. Who are your array of generally creepy actors or people who give you the heebie-jeebies who you'd want to cast any number of roles in this? Because I want Paul Dano to play John Nefastus. If Paul Dano walked into a bar I was at, I would leave.
That's pretty good. Who was I thinking?
Macaulay Culkin would be good for someone.
Who's the guy in Fargo? And he's been William H. Macy. I feel like you could get William H. Macy in something. I don't know who he would play in this. Macy.
Is he the older guy?
He's the guy with the really big forehead
from
in Fargo.
The first show that Jeremy Allen White was in that was good.
Shameless.
Shameless. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he would be good.
What about Jeremy Allen White as Metzger?
Nah, I don't think he's like enough of a sort of tall, dark, classically handsome.
Jeremy Allen White as Stanley Kotex. Yeah, there's a little bit less of an ensemble quality to this book than perhaps in V.
You could do like just Sydney Sweeney and 20 men that have never acted in a movie before.
Yeah,
that's like maybe a good vibe because you've got one person who's very well established and then you're meeting everyone who's not established.
Yeah, I could see that.
That's very meta.
Have the four actors who are all going to be in those Beatles biopics play the paranoids.
I was thinking about that. I was also thinking you could just cast all of the boys from Stranger Things. Like, just let's get them some more.
Get the gang back together.
I cannot think of the actor.
Honestly, speaking of Stranger Things, Maya Hawke would be a pretty good Oedipa.
Not the main lady from that show, whose name
Millie
I can't think of.
Bobby Brown.
Millie Bobby Brown, yeah, that's her name.
Or Millie Bob Bon Jovi, or whatever her name is now. But no, I think Maya Hawke. Maya Hawke might be a good Oedipa. Do we feel good about our cast list, such as it is?
We'll leave it up to the casting professionals for this one.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think so. I can't think of the person I was thinking of for Mucho. It's fine.
Well, I can always add that to the show notes of like Duri.
If I think of
Duri
it
3 days later
2 days
remembered who it was because we watched the next episode of a TV show. And she was like, "That's right.
That's him." I have a question.
Yeah.
This was a slim volume. We've talked about that.
Yep.
Take a shot for every time we say slim volume.
Do you all have another slim volume that you really like that you would like to recommend to the audience?
Ooh.
Pedro Paramo.
It's a good one. The most recent translation or the older translation?
I'm going most recent translation, although I've read both translations because you can't ask for a specific translation from the library. They'll just send you whichever.
Mm-hmm. I only asked that because I read an article that was talking about how good the recent translation was.
I read the new translation first and the old translation second. So some of the things I read about the new translation, I think it would have been more confusing, perhaps, but I already knew what was going on because I'd read the first one, so read the new one. But it's very good. It's just so good.
What are my favorite slim volumes?
While you ponder, Patrick, I'll share mine. I really like A Month in the Country by J.L. Carr, like a New York Review of Books. I read it a couple of years ago on the train. It was great. Really good read. It is about this guy that is hired to restore this medieval mural in a church in the countryside. And he sort of lives in the bell tower of the church and kind of goes through this journey over the course of the summer while he's restoring this painting and kind of connecting to the other people in this small town. It's a good little story. Not nearly as dense as The Crying of Lot 49, but it's a good read.
You saying that reminded me, I feel like the New York Review Books classics are just filled with wonderful, slim little volumes. But it reminded me of one of my favorites, also published through that imprint, of The Invention of Moral by Adolfo Bioy Casares, which is a story about this fugitive who washes up on a desert island, or he's hiding out on a desert island, except the island increasingly seems less and less deserted, but also the people who are inhabiting the island are they sort of start to seem less and less human the closer he pays attention to them. And I won't spoil what it gets up to, but it's like fun and weird and mind bendy and
sounds paranoid.
Yeah, it's super paranoid.
Yeah, I liked The Invention of Morale. What did we watch recently that reminded us of that?
We've been playing the video game Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, which has a lot of
like movie or TV show.
It was adapted into the movie last year at Marienbad. I don't know what.
That's not what I'm thinking of.
Well, you it's not.
It's not
not
my day.
Thinking, it's not your day for thinking about things you're thinking about.
What I'm thinking of.
I didn't explain Pedro Paramo to the listener, but it's about a guy who goes back to his mom's hometown and sort of gets in over his head with the remaining living and ghost inhabitants and his biological father's legacy. And it's spooky.
Interesting.
Spooky is fun.
Shall I move us to our outro? Are there any last thoughts we want to have on The Crying of Lot 49?
I'm glad we'll get to, going into Gravity's Rainbow, say that things remind us both of V and or The Crying of Lot 49.
Yeah, so that is, in fact, where we're headed next. The next episode you hear in this feed will be about Gravity's Rainbow. I believe I should have looked. Does anybody know what I said the first?
You said it was the first 60 pages. I got a screenshot. Let me look how to find my phone. I took a screenshot.
It's the first 60 pages in like our sort of most recent edition. Gravity's Rainbow, for those of you who have not read the book or don't have the book in front of you yet, is divided into like 4 big parts and then sort of like subsections within those parts. So for the foreseeable future, as we're reading it, I think I'm just going to number them like Super Mario Brothers levels, where it'll be like part 1, section 6, or like part 1, section 6 through part 1, section 12 or something. But I haven't enumerated those yet. But it's about the first 60 pages. You can check the show notes for exactly what parts those will be. I will write them down. But it's roughly the first 60 pages. I would like to maybe take us out on... So we received an email that I'll read in full next time. But the email makes mention of Richard Fariña, who Gravity's Rainbow is dedicated to. Richard Fariña was a contemporary of Thomas Pynchon at Cornell and died in a motorcycle accident shortly after the publication of his novel Been Down So Long It Feels Like Up. And Thomas Pynchon, in a re-release of that book, wrote an introduction sort of about Richard Fariña, to whom he would dedicate Gravity's Rainbow, but also about their time at Cornell. And the introduction is kind of illuminating. I read it the other night in preparation for Gravity's Rainbow, the introduction at least, and there was a section that made me think a lot about Oedipa. So I want to use this as a transition from Oedipa Moss to Gravity's Rainbow here. So this is Thomas Pynchon writing about Cornell in the 50s and Richard Fariña, and also perhaps the kind of college environment we could imagine Oedipa coming from if she's 28 in the mid 60s. So she would have been 18 in the mid 50s. 1958, to be sure, was another planet. You have to appreciate the extent of sexual repression on that campus at the time. Rock and roll had been with us for a few years, but the formulation dope/sex/rock and roll hadn't yet been made by too many of us. At Cornell, all undergraduate women were supposed to be residing part of the time under lock and key, either in dormitories or sorority houses. On weeknights, they had to be inside these places by something like 11 p.m., at which time all the doors were locked. Staying out all night without authorization meant discipline by the Women's Judiciary Board, up to and including expulsion from school. On Saturday nights, the curfew was graciously extended to something equally unreal, like 12 midnight. Curfews were not the only erotic problem we faced. There was also a 3 or 4 to 1 ratio of male to female students, as well as a variety of co-ed undergarments fiendishly designed to delay until curfew, if not to prevent outright any access to one's date's pelvic area. One sorority house I knew of, and certainly others, had a house officer stationed by the front door on date nights. Her job was to make sure, in a polite but manual way, that every sister had some version of a Playtex chastity belt in place before she was allowed out the door. Landlords and local tradesfolk were also encouraged to report to the administration the presence of co-eds in off-campus apartments, such as Fariña's. In these and other ways, the university believed it was doing its duty to act in loco parentis. This extraordinary meddling was not seriously protected until the spring of 1958, when, like a preview of the 60s, students got together on the issue, wrote letters, rallied, demonstrated, and finally, a couple of thousand strong by torchlight in the curfew hours between May 23rd and 24th, marched to and stormed the home of the university president. Rocks, eggs, and a smoke bomb were deployed. So Richard Fariña was like one of the fellas at Cornell who was like in charge or like leading some of these protests against the repression of undergraduate women students and their surveillance at Cornell at the time. And it did make me think that, like, if you went to college under that kind of regime and then you just like walked around Berkeley in the mid 60s, you would probably have a lot of thoughts of like, oh, suddenly I see why I'm like this and the kids are like this.
A lot has changed.
A lot has changed.
While you were talking there, I was looking, I didn't quite find what I was looking for, but I have a old like date book from both my grandma and my great grandma. Yeah, I was thinking about that a minute because it was on the other side, but yes, and great grandma on the other side of the family, of like their like it basically details all the dates that they went on, or like different social events that they went to during college, which was cool. A little bit earlier, closer to like 1930s, 1940s than 50s, or maybe late 40s, early 50s. Anyways, I don't have the exact dates, but it is very interesting. They have much more structured social lives than I ever. I mean, they had more vibrant social lives than I did in college, frankly, but they were much more structured. There were a lot of like dances and events, and sort of like multiple times a week there were different sort of like sorority and fraternity like gatherings. And I wasn't in a sorority, so maybe I would have had a more structured social life, but it did feel like a different time.
And that's kind of where, you know, Oedipa is coming out of.
Yeah, a lot of double dates, a lot of very like structured outings.
So yes, like I said, we got an email. We'll read it in full next time because it is a little more tailored to Gravity's Rainbow. But shout out to Matt for sending us that email that we'll read a preview of Matt's fine email.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
So get your copy of Gravity's Rainbow. We're excited to dive into it. Thank you for listening to Pynchon Pals and for listening to our longest outro, perhaps ever. And thank you to Andrew Tillett.
Thank you.
And to Duri Long.
Thank you very much
for joining me. If you like what we're doing here, we would love it if you left us a review on Apple Podcasts or on your podcatcher of choice. Several reviews have come in since the last time we implored y'all to write some, and we really
berated the audience.
Yes, since we berated the audience, but we really appreciate it. They are always a pleasure to read, and they also do help. You know, the algorithms put our podcast into more people's home pages on podcasts. However that works, it helps.
Who's
I
the
promise.
real Trastero?
Yeah, the real Trastero is the algorithm.
The algorithm.
On our next episode, as I said, we'll be reading like the first 60 or so pages of Gravity's Rainbow. If you'd like to get in touch with the show or submit a question to be answered on air, you can reach us at pynchonpals@gmail.com. And to support the work that we do here, you can head to patreon.com/pynchonpals. You'll get access to the aforementioned episode on the Master and the upcoming Q&A bonus pod that will be out sometime this month. It will be the March episode, pending our recording schedule, exactly when that'll shake out. But it'll be in March.
So please send us your questions.
So please send us your questions. Yeah.
Crying of Lot 49, I guess, is officially the topic for the Q&A, but whatever else is cool too.
Yeah.
I just like reading the questions. We don't put them all on air, but they're all fun to read.
Our theme music is Horology by the inimitable King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, released under a Creative Commons Attributions No Derivatives license on the album Polygon Dwana Land. Pinch on Pals is produced and edited by me, Patrick Fiorilli. You can find more of my work alongside my newsletter, Critical Theory Craft, at my website, www.patf.io. Until next time,
we await Silent Trastero's Empire.
Can we do a little auctioneer impression? And we hear 100, I hear 120, 120. Now I hear
121. 121 on the stamps.
Lot 49.
Going twice.
I'm a mysterious buyer.
So
why are there two auctioneers?
It's the Trastero of auctioneers.
Or your camera, yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm trying to collect. I have like no room on my desk because I have these like stamps for making
exciting.
these like bugs. But the stamps have been strewn all
Stamps
over.
for making bugs is
strewn all over my desk. So I'm trying to collect them so I have a little bit of breathing room.
Is this multiple stamp parts to make, or is like each one a bug?
No, you
like,
can make like different bugs. So like this is like a body of a bug.
That's really cool.
And then like you could make like I don't know, here's some legs.
Can you imagine just the trying to get into the club and the bouncers constructing a bespoke bug on your wrist?
God, I feel like I've
forever to get in.
I feel like we have been to some clubs where I could see that happening. Somewhere there's a DIY venue in Chicago where it's like, wait. I think this bug looks too similar to the bug I just stamped on the last person. I need to make
go
a
wash
new
your
bug
hands
for
and
you.
come back out here.
Come back out here.
Go in, wash your hands, come back, and I'll get you a new bug.
I feel like that could show up in one of the clubs Oedipa goes to. You have to get like a unique Trastero stamp to get into the club.